The filial heart before it is too late. Do not wait until your parents are old, weak, and calling for a bowl of rice, before you finally begin to call yourself a grateful child. There is a kind of sorrow that comes too late. It arrives when the house has become quiet, when the hands that once cooked for us begin to tremble, when the voice that once called our name with strength now sounds thin from the next room. Only then do many people suddenly become gentle. Only then do they bring water, lift a blanket, prepare a meal, speak softly, and say, "I am taking care of my parents." But the question is, why did our tenderness wait so long? Why did our respect appear only when our parents no longer had the strength to ask for much? Filial love does not begin at the hospital bed. It does not begin beside a wheelchair. It does not begin when we finally have enough money to pay for medicine, or when we stand before a funeral altar holding incense with tears in our eyes. True gratitude begins much earlier. It begins in the small, ordinary moments that most people overlook. It begins when a mother calls from the kitchen, and we answer without annoyance. It begins when a father asks for help, and we put down what we are doing. It begins when parents remind us of something simple, and instead of rolling our eyes, we say, "Yes, I'll do it." In a family home, the greatest tests of the heart often do not look spiritual at all. They do not come with temple bells, scriptures, or solemn ceremonies. They come in the sound of a parent's voice calling from another room. "Can you help me carry this? Have you eaten yet? Please turn off the light. Come here for a moment. Don't stay up too late." These words are so ordinary that we may fail to notice their sacred weight. We may be holding a phone, watching a screen, answering a message, or lost in our own worries. And when that voice comes, we feel disturbed. We sigh, we delay, we answer sharply. Sometimes we pretend not to hear. Sometimes we say wait but never come. Sometimes we do the task but with a face so cold that our obedience becomes another form of hurt. And yet, in that exact moment, something deep is being measured. Not by the world, not by strangers, not by society, but by our own conscience. The question is not whether we love our parents in words. Most people can say, "Of course I love them." The question is whether our love is alive when it is inconvenient, whether our gratitude still has warmth when we are interrupted, whether our respect remains steady when our parents repeat themselves, when they speak slowly, when they do not understand our world, when they ask for things we think are small. A bowl of rice offered to an aged parent is a beautiful thing. A cup of water brought to a sick mother is noble. Sitting beside a frail father through the night is an act of love. No one should look down on these forms of care. But if we only begin there, if we only become devoted when our parents are helpless, then we have missed many years in which filial piety could have been practiced with joy. Because before parents become old, they are already worthy of our kindness. Before their backs bend, they are already deserving of our respect. Before their eyes grow dim, they have already spent countless days watching over us. Before their hands tremble, those same hands washed our clothes, prepared our meals, held us when we cried, worked through exhaustion, and gave more than we could understand. When we were small, we called one time and they came running. We cried in the night and they woke up, though they had barely slept. We were hungry and they found food. We were sick and they worried more than we did. We did not know how to walk, so they held us. We did not know how to speak, so they guessed our needs. We did not know danger, so they stood between us and the world. How many times did a mother eat less, so her child could eat more? How many times did a father hide his tiredness, so the family would feel safe? How many dreams were postponed? How many comforts were sacrificed? How many silent fears were swallowed? Because parents did not want their children to suffer. We may never know the full account. Parents rarely give us a list of what they endured. Their love is often hidden in details we never see. And perhaps that is why the Buddha placed such profound emphasis on gratitude to parents. In the Buddhist path, gratitude is not a decoration of character. It is not merely good manners. It is a doorway into wisdom. To recognize the kindness we have received is to awaken from the illusion that we stand alone. It is to see that this body, this breath, this chance to live, to learn, to practice, to love, all came to us through the care of others. Among those others, parents hold a place that is difficult to measure. The Buddha taught that mother and father are worthy of honor because they are our first protectors, our first supporters, our first field of kindness. Before we knew the word compassion, they practiced it toward us. Before we knew the word sacrifice, they embodied it in the quiet labor of raising us. Even imperfect parents, even parents with limitations, often carried burdens that children only understand much later, sometimes too late. To be filial, then, is not simply to repay a debt. In truth, the debt to parents cannot be repaid completely by money, gifts, or outward service alone. We could carry our mother on one shoulder and our father on the other for many years, and still their kindness would be difficult to equal. This is not said to make us feel guilty. It is said to make us awake. If the kindness is so great, then every small chance to respond with love becomes precious. When your mother calls, that may be your practice. When your father asks for help, that may be your temple bell. When your parents speak in a way that irritates you, that may be the moment to train patience. When they repeat advice you think you already know, that may be the moment to practice humility. When they ask you to do something simple, that may be the very place where gratitude becomes real. It is easy to bow before a statue of the Buddha and speak beautifully about compassion. It is harder to keep compassion in your voice when your parents interrupt your plans. It is easy to offer incense with folded hands. It is harder to fold your pride when your father corrects you. It is easy to speak of loving all beings. It is harder to answer your mother gently when you are tired. And yet the path is not separate from the home. The family is not outside spiritual practice. The kitchen, the doorway, the dining table, the small daily requests, the repeated reminders, the misunderstandings between generations, these are all places where the heart is trained. If we cannot bring mindfulness into the way we answer our parents, then our practice remains incomplete. If we cannot show gratitude to those who gave us life, how deep can our compassion truly be? Many people think filial piety is something grand. They imagine it as building a house for their parents, earning enough money to support them, paying for good doctors, arranging proper ceremonies, or making offerings in their name. These things can be meaningful, they can express love, but they are not the whole of filial piety. Sometimes the most powerful offering is not expensive at all. It is a softened tone, a patient ear, a quick response, a willingness to help before being asked twice, a heart that does not make parents feel like a burden. There are children who send money home but speak with irritation. There are children who buy gifts but never sit down to listen. There are children who organize ceremonies after death but caused tears while their parents were alive. There are children who wait until the final years to become attentive, not realizing that every ignored call, every harsh reply, every careless absence has already left marks on the hearts of those who loved them first. A parent may not always say, "You hurt me." Often they remain silent. They excuse us. They say, "My child is busy." They say, "Young people are like that." They say, "It's all right." But inside, a small sadness may gather, not because they demand luxury, not because they want to control our lives, but because the child they once held so tenderly now seems far away, impatient, unreachable, and one day, the voice that called us from the kitchen will no longer call. The footsteps in the hallway will be absent. The chair at the table will be empty. Then, even if we wish to answer gently, there will be no one asking. Even if we wish to say, "Mother, I'm coming," or "Father, let me help," the moment will have passed. This is the grief we must not create for ourselves. That is why this reflection begins with the bowl of rice we should not wait to offer. Not because feeding parents in old age is unimportant, but because if we wait until then to awaken our gratitude, we have lost too many opportunities. Offer the bowl of rice, yes, the medicine, the care, the comfort, the protection, but also offer your presence today. Offer your patience today. Offer your respectful response today. Offer the simple obedience of a heart that remembers. When parents call your name, do not treat it as noise, for one day you may long to hear that voice again. When they ask for help, do not measure whether the task is important enough. Their request is not only about the task, it is about connection. When they remind you of something, do not only hear the words, hear the love hidden beneath them. Often a mother says, "Wear something warm," but what she means is, "Your well-being is still tied to my heart." A father says, "Be careful on the road," but what he means is, "Your life is precious to me." The Buddha's teaching invites us to look beneath the surface of ordinary life. What seems small may be spiritually vast. A gentle reply can protect a parent's heart. A respectful action can purify our own. A moment of patience can stop years of regret from forming. In the same way, a careless word may appear to vanish quickly, but it can remain in memory. A cold silence may seem harmless, but it can become a wound. So before we speak of great saints and sacred stories, we must first return to our own home. We must stand at the doorway of our daily life and ask, how do I answer the people who raised me? Do I make them feel cherished, or do I make them afraid to disturb me? Do I serve them only when others are watching, or also in the invisible moments? Do I wait for old age and illness to soften my heart, or can I begin now? In the life of the Buddha, we will see a reverence that reaches beyond ordinary memory, a gratitude that honors even the mother who gave birth to him and passed away soon after. In the life of Venerable Sariputta, we will see one of the greatest disciples, a master of wisdom, returning near the end of his life not to display power, not to seek comfort, but to guide his own mother toward the Dhamma. These stories are not distant legends meant only to be admired. They are mirrors. They ask us to look at our own conduct while there is still time. For wisdom without gratitude becomes dry. Practice without humility becomes proud. Compassion that skips over our parents and reaches only towards strangers is not yet complete. The path begins close to us. It begins with the people whose faces we have known since childhood, whose voices shaped our earliest sense of safety, whose sacrifices created the ground beneath our feet. If your parents are still alive, then your opportunity is still alive. If they can still call your name, then you can still answer with warmth. If they can still ask for help, then you can still serve without delay. If they can still speak, then you can still listen. If they can still sit at the table, then you can still share a meal not only with your body present, but with your heart present too. Do not wait for the day when their hands shake before holding them with tenderness. Do not wait for the day when their memory fades before speaking kindly. Do not wait for the day when you must spoon rice into their mouth before understanding how many times they fed you. Begin with the next call. Begin with the next request. Begin with the next chance to say yes, without irritation. This is not a small practice. This is the foundation of a grateful life. Before we look at the Buddha and Sariputta, we must first understand why parents hold such a sacred place in the path of gratitude. In the Buddhist way of seeing life, parents are not only the people who gave birth to us, they are the first field of merit, the first place where a human being learns what love feels like before even knowing the word love. Before we knew how to bow before a statue, before we knew how to chant a verse, before we understood right and wrong, success and failure, honor and shame, there were already two figures bending over us in the dim light of ordinary days. There were hands that lifted us when we could not lift ourselves. There were arms that carried our small body through fever, hunger, crying, and helplessness. There were eyes that watched our breath while we slept, afraid that even one tiny sign of discomfort might mean we were unwell. A person may later become learned, wealthy, respected, or spiritually mature. A person may travel far, speak many languages, read many scriptures, and sit in meditation under quiet trees. But if we look deeply, every step began from a time when we could do nothing by ourselves. We could not feed ourselves. We could not clean ourselves. We could not turn danger away. We could not say, "I am cold," or "I am hungry," or "I am afraid." We only cried, and someone had to understand that cry. Someone had to wake from sleep. Someone had to put aside tiredness. Someone had to carry the burden without asking whether we deserved it. This is why Buddhism speaks of parents with such reverence. Not because all parents are perfect, not because every family is without pain, but because the debt of life begins in a place deeper than memory. Even before the child can remember the mother's face or the father's voice, the child has already received. The body we now use to bow, to work, to earn, to practice, to serve, this body was protected when it was fragile. The breath we now take so naturally was once watched over by those who trembled at the sound of our cough. The life we now call our own was carried across countless small dangers by people who may never have told us how much it cost them. Many children grow up thinking that what parents do is simply responsibility. Of course they must cook. Of course they must work. Of course they must pay school fees. Of course they must endure, because they are parents, we think, and parents are supposed to do these things. But when we mature, if our heart becomes softer, we begin to see that behind the word responsibility, there are many sacrifices no one applauded. There were meals they made sure we ate first, while they quietly said they were not hungry. There were clothes bought for us, while they wore the same old shirt for another season. There were nights when they lay awake, not because anyone praised their devotion, but because they were wondering how to keep the family safe, how to pay the debt, how to face tomorrow, how to hide their fear so the children could sleep peacefully. There were dreams postponed, journeys never taken, comforts refused, illnesses ignored, and tears swallowed before entering the room with a smile. Sometimes a parent's love is not dramatic. It is not always spoken in sweet words. It may look like a lunch packed before dawn, a reminder repeated too many times, a hand roughened by labor, a back bent from years of carrying what the children never saw. It may sound like scolding, but underneath there is worry. It may feel like strictness, but underneath there is fear that the child will suffer in the world. And even when parents do not know how to express love beautifully, often their whole life becomes a sentence of love written in action. When we are young, we easily notice what we lack. We remember the times our parents did not understand us, the times they compared us, the times they were impatient, the times they failed to speak gently. These wounds may be real, and Buddhism does not ask us to pretend that pain is not pain, but the practice of gratitude asks us to widen our seeing. It asks us to hold the whole picture, not only the part that hurt. It asks us to remember that our parents, too, were human beings shaped by their own suffering, their own fears, their own ignorance, their own unfinished wounds. They gave from what they had, and sometimes what they had was limited. Yet the fact that we lived, grew, and stood here today means that somewhere along the way, we were sustained. Gratitude in Buddhism is not merely an emotion that rises for a moment and disappears. It is not only saying, "Thank you, Mother," or "Thank you, Father" on a special day, while the rest of our speech remains sharp and our behavior remains careless. Gratitude is a practice. It is something we train through the body, through speech, through thought, through the way we answer a call, the way we respond to a request, the way we make time when we are busy, the way we soften our face when we feel irritated. A grateful child does not only remember what parents have done. A grateful child allows that remembering to change the way they live. If the mother asks for help with something small, gratitude becomes the feet that stand up and go. If the father gives advice, even if the child thinks differently, gratitude becomes the patience to listen before reacting. If parents grow repetitive with age, telling the same story again and again, gratitude becomes the kindness not to shame them. If they are slow, gratitude becomes the willingness to wait. If they are lonely, gratitude becomes presence. If they are worried, gratitude becomes reassurance. This does not mean that filial piety is blind submission. In Buddhist understanding, wisdom must always walk together with compassion. To honor parents does not mean obeying what is harmful, unjust, or unwholesome. It does not mean allowing abuse, supporting wrongdoing, or surrendering one's conscience. True respect is not slavery. True obedience is not the death of discernment. If a parent asks a child to do something that harms oneself or others, the child must still be guided by the Dhamma, by compassion, by right understanding. But many times, what parents ask of us is not harmful. It is simply inconvenient. They ask us to come home a little earlier. They ask us to help fix something. They ask us to carry a bag, make a phone call, explain a document, sit with them, eat with them, listen to them. And because we are busy, because we think our life is more important, because we are caught in our screens, plans, ambitions, and private moods, we answer with irritation. We say later. We say, I'm tired. We say, why do you keep asking me? We make them feel like a burden for needing the child they once carried without complaint. This is where the practice begins, not in grand speeches about love, but in the small moment when our name is called from another room. In that moment, we can see the ego arise. The ego says, why me? The ego says, I am busy. The ego says, they are disturbing me. The ego says, I already do enough. But if mindfulness is present, another voice may appear, quieter and wiser. It says, once I disturbed their sleep many times. Once I cried and they came once. I needed everything and they did not abandon me. Now they ask for one small thing. Can I not answer with gentleness? To say yes with respect when the request is wholesome and reasonable is not weakness. It is training. It trains the heart to loosen its hardness. It trains the tongue to let go of harshness. It trains the body to serve without resentment. It trains the mind to remember interdependence, that no one lives by oneself alone. And on the path of awakening, this training is precious, because the greatest obstacles are often not outside us. They are our pride, impatience, selfishness, and the belief that our comfort should always come first. Many people want to conquer anger in meditation, but cannot answer their mother without annoyance. Many people want to understand emptiness, but cannot put down their pride before their father. Many people want to cultivate compassion for all beings, but have no patience for the two beings who gave them life. Buddhism gently brings us back to what is close. If we cannot practice kindness at home, where our habits are strongest, then our kindness elsewhere may still be fragile. If we cannot bow inwardly to those who raised us, our bow before the Buddha may not yet be complete. The home, therefore, becomes a monastery of daily practice. The kitchen becomes a meditation hall. The sound of a parent calling becomes a bell of mindfulness. The old stories become teachings in patience. The repeated reminders become chances to observe irritation. The simple act of bringing water, preparing food, driving them to an appointment, or sitting beside them in silence becomes a way of polishing the heart. When we see parents as the first blessing, we stop measuring filial piety only by money. Money can help, of course, providing for parents, giving them comfort, making sure they are cared for. These are meaningful acts. But money without tenderness can still leave them lonely. A beautiful house without warm speech can still feel cold. Expensive medicine without a loving presence can still leave a parent's heart aching. Sometimes what they need most is not much. They need to feel that they are not forgotten. They need to feel that their child does not look at them as an obstacle. They need to hear a gentle voice. They need to be asked, "Have you eaten?" Not as a habit, but with real concern. They need to know that, after giving so many years of their life, they still have a place in ours. And perhaps the most painful thing is that many children only understand this after time has already taken something away. When parents are strong, we assume they will remain. When their voice is clear, we answer carelessly. When their hands can still cook, clean and work, we forget they are aging. Then one day, the steps become slower. The hair becomes white. The memory weakens. The body that once carried us now needs support. And suddenly we realize that all the ordinary days were not ordinary at all. They were chances. They were blessings. They were doors through which gratitude could have entered, but we were too distracted to notice. That is why the Dhamma urges us not to wait. Do not wait until regret becomes your teacher. Let wisdom teach you first. While parents are still here, practice gratitude in living form. Speak more gently, help more quickly, visit more sincerely, listen more patiently. If there is pain in the relationship, practice with wisdom. Set boundaries where needed, but do not let bitterness consume the whole field of the heart. If reconciliation is possible, take a step. If closeness is difficult, at least cultivate compassion. Remember that hatred never heals the past. Only understanding, even gradual understanding, can release the heart from suffering. Parents are called a field of merit because how we treat them plants seeds in our own mind. A harsh response plants one kind of seed. A patient response plants another. Neglect plants one kind of future. Care plants another. Every act of respect, every moment of restraint, every small service offered without showing off becomes a seed of goodness. And this goodness does not only benefit the parents, it transforms the child. It makes the heart less narrow. It makes the mind more humble. It prepares us to love beyond preference and convenience. To honor parents is to recognize the river from which our life has flowed. A river may have stones, muddy places, difficult currents, but still, it carried water. In the same way, our parents may have had faults, limitations, and moments that caused pain, but through them our life came into the world. Seeing this clearly does not erase complexity. It deepens compassion. It allows gratitude to become mature, not childish, not blind, but spacious enough to hold both truth and tenderness. And when gratitude matures, it naturally becomes action. We no longer need to wait for a festival, a funeral, or a crisis. We begin now. We begin with the next word, the next meal, the next errand, the next time they call our name. We begin by remembering that what feels small to us may be deeply comforting to them. A quick reply, a respectful tone, a little patience, a cup of tea placed near their hand. These simple things may become offerings more precious than gold when they are filled with sincerity. Once we see parents as the first blessing, we can begin to understand why the Buddha himself honored his mother in a way that still moves Buddhist hearts today. His awakening did not make him cold. His wisdom did not make him forget the source of his human birth. And in the life of the Buddha, as well as in the life of his great disciple Sariputta, we find a profound reminder that the path to liberation does not turn away from gratitude. It purifies gratitude, deepens it, and raises it into a noble practice of the heart. Long before the world knew him as the Buddha, long before kings bowed before his wisdom and seekers crossed forests to hear his voice, he entered this life as a child, not as a statue, not as a symbol, not as a distant figure beyond human feeling, but as a newborn baby held by a mother whose heart had surely waited for him with tenderness. His mother was Queen Maya, a woman remembered in the Buddhist tradition for her purity, grace, and virtue. She was the queen of King Suddhodana of the Sakya clan, and in her womb was carried the child who would one day become Siddhartha Gautama, the awakened one. Yet the story of the Buddha's birth is also a story touched by separation. It carries beauty, but also loss. It carries blessing, but also the quiet ache of a child who would grow without the daily warmth of the mother who gave him life. The tradition tells us that when the time of birth approached, Queen Maya traveled toward her parental home, as was the custom of noble women in that time. Along the way, she hit a garden of Lumbini, a place of gentle trees and blooming life. There, beneath the shade of a sal tree, in a moment that would become sacred to countless generations, Prince Siddhartha was born. We often speak of this birth with reverence, with images of flowers, light, and heavenly beings. We remember it as the beginning of a great spiritual journey. But if we listen more softly, if we bring our heart closer to that moment, we may also hear something deeply human. A mother had just given birth. A child had just taken his first breath. A family had welcomed a son. And somewhere in that sacred beauty was the fragile thread of human life, so precious and so easily broken. Only 7 days after giving birth, Queen Maya passed away. Just 7 days. A lifetime can be changed by 7 days. A child may not remember the face of his mother, may not remember her voice, may not remember the feeling of her hand, and yet his whole life has already been shaped by her. Because before memory, there is life. Before gratitude can be spoken, there is the body that was formed through another's sacrifice. Before a child can say, "Mother," there is the mother who carries, protects, nourishes, and endures. This is why, when we speak of filial piety, we should not think only of the things we do after our parents become weak. We should not wait until their backs are bent, their eyes are dim, their hands tremble, and their voices grow faint before we begin to call ourselves grateful. The deepest gratitude begins when we recognize the truth of our own existence. We are here because someone bore pain for us. Someone lost sleep for us. Someone's body changed. Someone's youth faded. Someone's heart worried so that we might live. Even the Buddha, the perfectly awakened one, did not appear in this world without a mother. He did not descend into human life untouched by the laws that bind all beings. He was born. He was held, he was separated. He carried, in the very fact of his human birth, the debt of life that every child owes to a mother. And perhaps this is what makes his life so moving. The Buddha was not great because he avoided human sorrow. He was great because he saw through it completely. He did not deny birth, aging, death, love, loss, and separation. He looked directly into them. He understood them not as cold ideas, but as realities woven into every life. When Prince Siddhartha lost his mother so soon, he lost something that no palace could replace. He would grow up surrounded by luxury, protected by guards, cared for by attendants, educated as a prince. He would have fine clothing, beautiful gardens, music, comfort, and honor. But there is a kind of warmth that no palace wall can create. There is a softness in a mother's presence that no treasure can buy. A child does not know philosophy. A child knows touch, scent, tone, rhythm. A child knows whether arms are gentle, whether the room feels safe, whether a voice returns again and again like a promise. Queen Maya could not remain physically by Siddhartha's side as he grew. She could not watch his first steps. She could not hear his first words. She could not guide his small hands, soothe his tears, or smile at him across the courtyard as he learned the ways of the world. And yet her role in his life was not small. Sometimes we think that only what lasts a long time is important. But in the Dhamma, we learn that even a brief condition can give rise to immeasurable results. A lamp may be lit in a single moment, and from that flame, countless other lamps may shine. Queen Maya's time with her son was short, but through her, the one who would become the Buddha entered the human world. Through her body, a path of liberation would later be opened to gods and humans. Through her sacrifice, the voice of compassion would one day be heard across kingdoms, forests, villages, and centuries. This is one reason Buddhist hearts remember her with reverence. To honor the Buddha, while forgetting the mother who bore him, would be incomplete. To praise the fruit while ignoring the root would be unwise. Queen Maya reminds us that behind every noble life, there is often hidden labor, silent suffering, and love that may not even live long enough to be thanked. But the young prince was not left without maternal care. After Queen Maya's passing, her sister, Mahapajapati Gautami, took him into her arms and raised him as her own. She was his aunt by blood, but in care she became his mother. She fed him, protected him, watched over him, and gave him the daily tenderness that a child needs in order to grow. Here, the story opens another door in our understanding. Motherhood is not only a matter of giving birth. Birth is sacred, but raising is also sacred. The one who carries a child in the womb gives life. The one who carries a child through days and years gives shelter to that life. The one who wakes at night, who worries during sickness, who teaches, forgives, feeds and stays, is also a mother in the deepest sense. Many people in this world have been loved by someone who did not give birth to them. A grandmother, an aunt, an adoptive mother, an elder sister, a stepmother, a neighbor, a teacher, sometimes even a father who had to become both father and mother. Love takes many forms. The heart that protects a child becomes a field of merit. The hands that raise the vulnerable are hands worthy of respect. Mahapajapati Gautami's life shows us this truth. She did not merely perform a duty, she offered herself. She stepped into the empty space left by her sister's death and filled it, as much as one human being could, with care. In doing so, she became part of the Buddha's life in a way that cannot be forgotten later. When the prince became the Buddha, his relationship with Mahapajapati Gautami would carry profound significance. She would become one of the first women to seek going forth in the Buddha's dispensation. Her faith, courage and perseverance would help open the way for women to enter the monastic path. But before all that, before robes and teachings and assemblies, there was the simple, tender fact that she had raised him. She had mothered the child who lost his mother. When we reflect on this, we see that the Buddha's awakening did not erase his human relationships. It transformed the way he understood them. He did not cling to family love with ignorance, saying, "This is mine forever, this must never change." But neither did he reject love and gratitude as if they were obstacles to the path. Instead, he purified them. He lifted them beyond attachment, beyond possessiveness, beyond selfish longing, and revealed their noblest form. In ordinary life, love often says, "You belong to me." Wisdom teaches love to say, "May you be free from suffering." Ordinary attachment says, "I cannot live without you." Compassion says, "Because I know separation is real, I will love with humility and gratitude while I still can." Ordinary pride says, "My parents should understand me, support me." Filial wisdom says, "Before I ask what they have not done, let me remember what they have already given." The Buddha's teachings placed gratitude at the heart of moral life. He spoke of parents as beings of great kindness, difficult to repay. Why difficult? Because their care is not measured only by money, food, or education. It is measured by years of worry, by sacrifices unseen, by patience that may never be praised, by the willingness to suffer so that the child may survive. A mother may eat less so the child can eat more. A father may hide his exhaustion so the child does not feel afraid. Parents may appear ordinary to the world, but to the child they once were the first protection against hunger, cold, and danger. They cleaned what was dirty. They held what was weak. They repeated the same lessons 100 times. They forgave mistakes that others would not forgive. They carried hopes in silence and fears in secret. This does not mean every parent is perfect. The Buddha never taught blind attachment or foolishness. Some family histories carry wounds, confusion, and pain. But the principle of gratitude remains a deep practice because it asks us to see clearly. If there was kindness, remember it. If there was sacrifice, honor it. If there was life given, do not treat it lightly. And if the relationship is difficult, then practice with wisdom, boundaries, and compassion. Not hatred that burns the heart. In the life of the Buddha, gratitude became expansive. He did not limit compassion to his own family. He became a teacher to all who suffered. Yet the universal compassion he embodied did not require him to despise the personal bonds from which life began. A river may flow to the sea, but it does not deny its spring. A tree may spread shade to countless beings, but it does not reject its roots. So when we remember Queen Maya, we remember the mother who gave birth and then departed too soon. When we remember Mahapajapati Gautami, we remember the mother who remained and raised. Together, they show us two faces of maternal kindness, the kindness of bringing life into the world, and the kindness of nurturing that life day after day. And when we remember Siddhartha, we remember that even one destined for awakening began as a child dependent on others. This is humbling. It tells us that no matter how successful we become, no matter how educated, wealthy, respected, or spiritually advanced, we should not become arrogant toward the ones who cared for us when we could do nothing for ourselves. There was a time when we could not turn over without help. There was a time when we cried and someone came. There was a time when we dirtied our clothes and someone cleaned us. There was a time when we were sick and someone touched our forehead through the night. There was a time when our small life was guarded by the big, tired hearts of others. If we wait until our parents are very old before we serve them, we may still be doing good, but we may have missed many chances for goodness along the way. Filial piety is not only lifting a bowl of rice to their lips when they can no longer lift it themselves. It is also answering when they call. It is not speaking harshly when they ask a simple question twice. It is helping before being asked again and again. It is noticing their tiredness. It is remembering that their requests, though small, may be their way of still feeling connected to us. Sometimes a parent asks for a cup of water, but beneath that request is a longing to know, do you still care? Sometimes a mother reminds us of something simple, and we feel annoyed, not realizing that her reminding is one of the last forms her love can take. Sometimes a father asks us to help with a small task, and we delay, thinking it unimportant, while to him it may be a quiet test of whether his child still has patience for him. The Buddha's story invites us to become tender before it is too late. Queen Maya's passing reminds us that life does not promise long companionship. Mahapajapati's care reminds us that love must be expressed through action. The Buddha's awakening reminds us that the highest wisdom does not make the heart dry. It makes the heart more grateful, more compassionate, more awake to the preciousness of every bond. If the enlightened one did not forget the conditions of his birth, how can we forget ours? If the path of liberation includes gratitude, how can we call ourselves spiritual while being careless toward those who gave us life and care? A person may chant beautifully, bow deeply, and speak of compassion for the world, but if at home they answer their parents with coldness, something is still incomplete. True practice begins close to us. It begins with the voice in the next room. It begins with the aging hands that once held ours. It begins with the ordinary request that interrupts our comfort. It begins when we soften our tone, when we put down our impatience, when we remember that obedience rooted in respect is not weakness. It is a noble training of the heart. The Buddha's life shows that awakening does not erase gratitude. It deepens it. His birth from Queen Maya, his upbringing by Mahapajapati Gautami, and his later teachings all point toward one truth. To be wise is to remember kindness. And this becomes even clearer in the teachings he gave about repaying parents. Teachings that remind us just how vast a parent's kindness can be, and how sincere our efforts must become if we wish to honor it. Among the Buddha's teachings on gratitude, there is one image so simple yet so powerful that it can stop the heart for a moment. The Buddha said that even if a person were to carry their mother on one shoulder and their father on the other shoulder for 100 years, even if they cared for them with devotion, washed and bathed them, fed them, massaged their limbs, and served them with patience through every season of life. Still, that person would not easily repay the debt owed to their parents. Just imagine that. 100 years of carrying them, 100 years of never putting them down, 100 years of offering the strength of your body, the time of your life, the comfort of your hands, the tenderness of your attention. And yet the Buddha said, even such a great service would not fully equal the kindness that mother and father have given. At first, this may sound almost impossible. We may wonder, how can the debt be so great? If a child truly sacrifices, truly works hard, truly feeds and protects their parents, is that not enough? But the Buddha was not speaking to make children feel hopeless. He was not placing a mountain of guilt on the heart. He was opening our eyes to something we often forget. He was showing that the kindness of parents is not measured only by money spent, meals cooked, or years of care. It goes deeper than that. It begins before we even know how to say thank you, before we had a name, before we had memory, before we knew the world. Our parents had already carried the burden of our existence. A mother carried us in her body, enduring discomfort, pain, worry, and change. She could not sleep as before. She could not move as before. Her body became the first house we ever lived in. Her blood, her breath, her strength, her patience became the first conditions of our life. And when we were born, we came into the world helpless, unable to stand, unable to speak, unable to feed ourselves, unable to protect ourselves from even the smallest danger. Then came the long years of care. Someone had to wake when we cried. Someone had to clean us when we were dirty. Someone had to hold us when we were afraid. Someone had to watch over us when fever came in the night. Someone had to feed us bite by bite, teach us step by step, bear with our noise, our sickness, our stubbornness, our endless needs. We did not know that our survival depended on their sacrifice. We did not see the tired eyes behind the smile. We did not count the hours of lost sleep. We did not understand the quiet fears they carried. Will my child be safe? Will my child grow well? Will my child have enough? Will my child suffer? A parent's kindness is not only in what they give with their hands, it is also in what they carry silently in the heart. Many parents do not speak of their worries because they do not want to burden their children. They swallow their tiredness. They hide their pain. They go to work when their body aches. They save the better portion of food for the child. They pretend not to need anything. Sometimes they are strict, sometimes clumsy, sometimes imperfect, because parents too are human beings shaped by their own suffering. But beneath so many ordinary actions, there is a stream of care that has flowed for years. This is why the Buddha's teaching is so moving. He understood that the life we call mine did not appear by itself. This body did not grow without conditions. These hands, these eyes, this voice, this chance to learn, to love, to practice, to seek truth, all of it arose because countless conditions supported us. And among the first and most intimate of those conditions were our parents. They gave us not only rice, clothing, shelter, and medicine. They gave us the opportunity to enter the human journey. They stood between us and danger when we could not protect ourselves. They introduced us to language, to manners, to the first sense of belonging. They became the first world we knew. Even if that world was imperfect, even if there were wounds, misunderstandings, or pain, the Buddha still invites us to look deeply, not shallowly, to see the roots, to see the conditions, to see that gratitude is not the denial of suffering, but the recognition of what has been received. There are people who say, I send money to my parents every month. I have done my duty. And truly, this is not small. In the Buddha's teaching, caring for parents in practical ways is precious. To feed them, support them, provide medicine, bring them to the doctor, repair the house. Make sure they are not abandoned in old age. These are beautiful actions. They are not to be dismissed. A child who remembers their parents' material needs is already walking on a path of gratitude. If a mother is hungry, We should not offer only philosophy. If a father is sick, we should not speak only of meditation. Compassion must have hands and feet. It must know how to cook porridge, buy medicine, make a phone call, drive to the hospital, sit beside the bed, and ask, "Are you feeling better today?" The Buddha never taught a cold spirituality that ignores human needs. He praised those who support their mother and father, who honor them, who care for them with respect. Practical service is noble. It softens selfishness. It trains the heart to remember. But the Buddha pointed to something even deeper. He taught that if parents lack faith, a child can help them develop faith. If they are stingy, a child can encourage generosity. If they live without virtue, a child can gently guide them toward moral conduct. If they are confused, anxious, or caught in harmful views, a child can help them grow in wisdom. In this way, the child repays parents in a higher form, not only by making their bodies comfortable, but by helping their hearts move toward peace. This is a profound teaching, because the body, no matter how carefully cared for, will still age. No matter how soft the bed, no matter how warm the meal, no matter how good the medicine, old age will continue its work. The back will bend, the eyes will dim, the ears will weaken, and one day, the breath will become fragile. Material support can reduce suffering, and that is very important, but it cannot completely free a person from fear, regret, anger, attachment, or confusion. Spiritual support touches another level of life. To help parents become more peaceful is to give them a treasure they can carry, even when the body declines, to help them soften their anger, release old grudges, speak kindly, give generously, trust in goodness, and understand impermanence. This is a gift beyond ordinary repayment. It is like lighting a lamp inside their own heart, so that when the outer world becomes dark, they still have inner light. But this must be done gently. A child should not become arrogant and think, "I know the Dhamma, and my parents know nothing." That attitude is not filial piety. It is pride wearing the clothing of wisdom. Parents may not accept advice from a child who speaks with judgment. They may resist if they feel corrected, shamed, or looked down upon. The way of the Buddha is not to force goodness into others. It is to embody goodness so clearly that others feel easy to come near it. Sometimes the best way to guide a parent is not by lecturing, but by changing ourselves. If we used to answer harshly, we learn to answer softly. If we used to avoid them, we begin to visit. If we used to show irritation when they repeated the same story, we listen with patience. If they worry too much, we do not mock them, we reassure them. If they are attached to old habits, we do not attack them. We offer another way, little by little. A peaceful child can become a quiet teaching. A grateful child can become a mirror in which parents see the goodness of their own efforts. In modern life, many people think filial piety can be transferred through a bank account. We are busy, we live far away. We send money, pay bills, order groceries online, and tell ourselves that we have done enough, and again, these actions matter. For parents who struggle financially, such support can bring relief. It can protect their dignity. It can help them sleep without worrying about tomorrow's meal. But if money arrives without warmth, something remains hungry. An elderly mother may have food in the kitchen, but still wait all day for one sincere phone call. An aging father may have medicine on the table, but still feel useless because no one asks for his thoughts anymore. Parents may not always need expensive gifts. Sometimes they need to hear, "How are you, really?" Sometimes they need us to sit down without rushing. Sometimes they need us to stop looking at the phone while they speak. Sometimes they need to feel that they are not a burden, not an old object in the corner of the family, not someone remembered only during holidays. There is a kind of loneliness that money cannot touch. So when we speak of repaying parents, we must ask not only, have I provided for them, but also, have I honored their heart? Do they feel seen? Do they feel respected? Do they feel safe to grow old in our presence? Or do they feel that every request from them is an inconvenience? Do they have to measure their words carefully because they fear our irritation? Do they hesitate to call because we always sound too busy? A bowl of rice offered with annoyance can wound the heart. A simple cup of tea offered with love can heal something old and hidden. This is why the Buddha's teaching reaches into the smallest moments. Repayment is not only in grand sacrifices. It is in the tone of our voice. It is in the speed with which we respond when they call. It is in the patience we show when they become slower. It is in our willingness to explain one more time, to listen one more time, to forgive one more time. It is in helping them turn away from bitterness, not by scolding them, but by bringing gentleness into the room. If a parent is caught in anger, we can speak words that cool the fire. If they are trapped in fear, we can sit beside them and breathe calmly. If they cling to possessions, we can invite them to give, even in small ways, so their heart tastes the joy of generosity. If they regret the past, we can remind them that goodness is still possible now. If they feel death approaching, we can help them meet it not with panic, but with trust, prayer, mindfulness, and peace. This is spiritual repayment. It does not require us to be monks or scholars. It does not require perfect eloquence. It requires sincerity. It requires that we care, not only whether our parents live long, but whether they live with a heart less burdened. It requires that we understand their final years are not merely a time for physical maintenance, but a sacred opportunity for reconciliation, gratitude, and inner freedom. And perhaps when we hear the Buddha say that carrying our parents for 100 years still cannot easily repay them, we should not feel defeated. We should feel awakened. We should realize that gratitude is not a debt we finish paying, like closing a bill. It is a way of living. It is a direction of the heart. It is the humility to know, I have received so much. Let me not be careless. Let me not wait until the funeral to become gentle. Let me not wait until their hands are cold to hold them with love. Because the truth is, many children become tender too late. They cry deeply when the coffin is closed. They offer flowers when the parent can no longer smell them. They speak praises when the parent can no longer hear. They prepare grand ceremonies but remember all the small moments when they were in pain, Buddhist or proud. The Buddha's teaching calls us back before that day. It tells us, begin now, repay now. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but sincerely. Send the money if they need it. Bring the medicine if they are sick. Repair the roof if it leaks. But also bring your presence. Bring your patience. Bring your softened voice. Bring a heart that no longer treats them as an interruption. And if you can, bring the Dhamma, not as a lecture, but as peace in your own behavior, as generosity in your own hands, as wisdom in your own choices. For when parents see their child living with virtue, they receive a deep comfort. They know their years of sacrifice were not wasted. They see that the life they protected has become a source of goodness. And when a child helps mother and father move even one step closer to kindness, faith, generosity, and understanding, that child offers a repayment more precious than gold. Still, the debt remains vast, not because we are failures, but because love itself is vast. The kindness that gave us life cannot be weighed on ordinary scales. It can only be honored day by day through a heart that remembers. And if gratitude is so vast, then we must ask, where does a child begin, especially when daily life is filled with impatience and forgetfulness? It begins in the simplest place, not in a temple, not before an altar, not during a grand ceremony where incense rises and everyone speaks gently. It begins in the hallway of an ordinary home, when a mother calls from the kitchen, "Can you come here for a moment?" It begins when a father, sitting in the next room, asks, "Can you help me look at this phone?" It begins when we are busy, tired, irritated, half lost in our own world, and suddenly the voice of a parent reaches us. In that very moment, the heart is being tested. Because filial piety is not only proven when parents are old and weak, when we are feeding them spoon by spoon, bringing water to their bedside, paying hospital bills, or standing beside them in the final years of life. Those things are precious, of course. They are necessary. They are noble. But if we wait until that day to begin practicing gratitude, we may discover that our heart has already grown stiff from many years of small refusals. A parent calls once, and we sigh. A parent asks for help, and we answer, wait, but the waiting becomes long. A parent does not understand something simple on the phone, and we say, how many times do I have to show you? A parent wants to tell us something, perhaps a story we have heard before, and our eyes stay fixed on the screen. We say we are listening, but our face is far away. We say we are busy, but sometimes we are only unwilling to be interrupted, and we may still do the task. We may bring the cup of water. We may fix the phone. We may carry the bag. We may drive them to the place they need to go. But if we do it with a cold face, with sharp words, with impatience in every movement, then the task is completed, yet the heart of filial piety has been missed. For parents do not only receive what is in our hands, they receive what is in our tone. They feel the atmosphere of our face. They hear not only the words, but the weight behind the words. A cup of water given with irritation can feel colder than no water at all. A small favor done with resentment can make an old mother feel ashamed for asking. A harsh reply can make a father lower his eyes and decide quietly not to call again. And that is a sorrow we may not notice at the time. We think, it is just a small thing. Why are they so sensitive? But to a parent, especially as age begins to soften the body and slow the mind, every request already carries a little embarrassment. They remember when they were strong. They remember when they could do everything by themselves. They remember when their hands did not tremble, when their eyes could read clearly, when they did not need anyone to explain buttons on a phone, forms at a counter, medicine labels, or the strange speed of the modern world. So when they call us, it is not always because the task is difficult. Sometimes it is because their heart wants to know, am I still welcome in my child's life? Is my voice still received with warmth? Can I still ask without becoming a burden? And our response answers them. A gentle yes, mum, I'm coming can warm the whole room. A simple yes, dad, let me see, can give dignity back to a person who is feeling left behind by the world. We may think such words are small, but the Dhamma often begins with what is small. A bow is small. A kind glance is small. A single breath before anger is small. Yet these are the seeds from which a whole life of virtue grows. When a parent calls, and we answer respectfully, we interrupt the habit of selfishness. We are saying to our own mind, not everything revolves around my comfort. Not every interruption is an enemy. Not every request is an attack on my freedom. This is spiritual training, not separate from meditation, not separate from compassion, not separate from the path the Buddha taught. It is easy to sit quietly when no one disturbs us. It is easy to feel peaceful when the room is arranged exactly as we like. But when we are tired and someone calls, when we are in the middle of something and someone needs us, that is where the real practice appears. The mind that wants to snap back, the mouth that wants to complain, the eyes that want to roll, the body that wants to delay. These are the places where we meet ourselves honestly. And if we can pause there, just for one breath, we can change the direction of karma. Before answering harshly, pause. Before saying, what now? Pause. Before showing irritation on the face, pause. In that pause, remember, this is the person who once rose for me. When we were babies, we did not call politely. We did not say, Mother, could you please wake up and help me? We cried, we screamed, we disturbed sleep at midnight, at 2 a.m, at dawn. We were hungry, wet, feverish, frightened, unable to speak, unable to wait. And how many times did our mother rise? How many times did our father sit awake? How many times did they carry us in their arms? Walking back and forth in a dark room, tired beyond words but still responding. They did not say, "Why are you so annoying?" They did not say, "I just helped you an hour ago." They did not say, "Figure it out yourself." They came. Again and again they came. When we could not walk, they bent down and held our hands. When we could not eat, they fed us slowly, mouthful by mouthful. When we could not understand danger, they watched over us. When we were sick, their whole heart became restless. A small cough from us could steal their peace. A fever in our body could burn through their night. They listened for our breath. They touched our forehead. They prayed in whatever way they knew how to pray. Now, after so many years, when they call us from the next room, why do we make them feel like they are disturbing our life? This question is not meant to condemn us. It is meant to awaken us, because many of us do love our parents. Deep down, we care. We would be frightened if they were seriously ill. We would be sad if they were gone. We might even say, with sincerity, "I would do anything for them." But the truth of love is not only measured in emergencies, it is measured in ordinary moments before the emergency comes. The Buddha's teaching invites us to return to mindfulness in daily life. And what daily life is more important than the way we treat the people who gave us life? If we can speak gently to strangers but harshly to our parents, our practice is still incomplete. If we can smile outside the home but become cold inside the home, our compassion has not yet reached its roots. If we can donate to temples, help friends, serve society, but answer our mother with annoyance, then we must look carefully, not with shame, but with honesty. The home is also a place of practice. The kitchen is also a place of practice. The doorway where a parent calls our name is also a place of practice. Sometimes filial piety is not grand. It is putting down the phone when your father speaks. It is turning your body toward your mother instead of answering with your back. It is not making them repeat themselves while your mind wanders. It is helping them with a small chore before they have to ask 3 times. It is hearing the weakness in their voice and responding before pride forces them to hide their need. Sometimes it is simply saying, "I'm here, what do you need?" and saying it in a way that does not wound. There are children who believe they are filial because they give money. And money is helpful. In many situations it is necessary. But if money comes with contempt, if support comes with a face that says, "You are a burden," then parents may accept it outwardly and suffer inwardly. There are children who buy medicine, pay bills, arrange comfort, but every sentence is filled with impatience. The parent is cared for, but not comforted. The body is supported, but the heart is left lonely. True filial piety must have warmth. A bowl of rice offered with kindness nourishes more than the body. A glass of water brought with respect becomes more than water. It becomes a message. You are not troublesome to me. Your life still matters. Your voice still has a place in my heart. This is why the tone of our response is so important. The same words can heal or hurt depending on how we speak them. What is it? Can be said like a door opening or like a door slamming shut. "I'm coming" can sound like love or like accusation. "I already told you" can either be patient guidance or a knife. Parents may forgive quickly, but forgiveness does not mean they do not feel pain. Many mothers swallow tears quietly. Many fathers hide, hurt behind silence. They do not want to make their children feel guilty. They simply become more careful, more hesitant, more alone. And one day, when the house becomes silent, we may long to hear that voice call us again. We may wish just once more to hear, "Can you come here?" We may wish for one more chance to answer gently. One more chance to bring water without sighing. One more chance to sit down and explain slowly. One more chance to say, "Don't worry, I'll help you." But life does not promise us that chance later. The practice must happen now, while their voice can still reach us. So let us make small vows, not dramatic vows that we forget tomorrow, but simple vows that can be lived today. When my parent calls, I will not answer as if I have been attacked. I will take one breath and soften my voice. If I am truly busy, I will still respond with respect. I'm finishing this, I'll come in a moment, and then I will actually come. I will not pretend not to hear. I will not make them call again and again until their voice becomes tired. I will not help with a face that makes them regret asking. When they need help with something simple, I will remember that the world has changed quickly. I will not use my knowledge as a weapon against their confusion. I will explain slowly if I can. If I become impatient, I will pause. I will remember how many times they taught me things I could not understand. How many times did they repeat words when I was learning to speak? How many times did they hold me steady when I kept falling? How many times did they clean what I dirtied, fix what I broke, forgive what I did not yet know? When I bring something to them, I will not throw it down carelessly. When I answer them, I will not raise my voice as if their need is an insult. When they speak, I will not always rush to correct them. When they move slowly, I will not shame them. When they forget, I will not humiliate them. When they ask the same question again, I will try to hear not only the repetition, but the fragile human being behind it. And after helping, I can ask, "Do you need anything else?" Such a small question, yet it can make a parent feel deeply cared for. Not because they want to command us, but because they feel that our heart is not trying to escape as quickly as possible. In that moment, they feel safe to be old, safe to be uncertain, safe to need help. No parent wants to become dependent. No parent dreams of troubling their child. Beneath many requests, there is a hidden fear. Will my child despise me when I am no longer useful? Will I be loved only when I am strong? Will I be treated kindly when I cannot give as much as before? Our conduct answers these fears more clearly than any speech. This is why immediate response matters. Not because we must obey blindly in every situation, and not because parents are always perfect. Families are complicated. Some wounds are deep. Some relationships require boundaries, patience and wisdom. But even within complexity, the principle remains. Do not let cruelty become your habit. Do not let irritation become your language. Do not let the people who once carried you feel that their existence is an inconvenience. Filial piety is not weakness. It is strength under control. It is the strength to lower the ego. It is the strength to serve without feeling diminished. It is the strength to speak gently when the mind wants to be sharp. It is the strength to remember kindness when forgetfulness would be easier. And in the Buddhist path, this remembering is sacred. Gratitude is not merely an emotion. It is a form of wisdom. It sees causes and conditions. It understands that we did not appear in this life alone. This body was nourished by someone's labor. This education was supported by someone's sacrifice. This safety, this language, this ability to stand in the world, so much of it rests upon countless acts we were too young to remember. Therefore, when a parent calls from another room, the sound is not ordinary. It carries the echo of our own childhood cries. It carries nights of lost sleep, years of meals prepared, clothes washed, school fees paid, fevers watched, mistakes forgiven. If we hear only an interruption, we have heard too little. If we hear gratitude calling us to practice, then even a small act becomes a path of awakening. A child who answers with respect is already offering repayment. A child who comes when called, not with resentment but with care, is already practicing the Dhamma. A child who protects the dignity of aging parents is already placing flowers at the altar of gratitude. So today, before it is too late, let us begin with the next call, not the last illness, not the final goodbye, not the moment when regret breaks open the heart. Let us begin while there is still time to walk into the room, smile gently, and say, "Yes, I'm here," because sometimes the deepest offering is not rare or difficult. Sometimes it is simply not making our mother feel lonely when she asks for help. Sometimes it is not making our father feel foolish when he does not understand. Sometimes it is coming quickly, speaking softly, and letting our presence say what words cannot fully express. I remember I am grateful. You are not a burden to me. But filial piety is not only about action, it is also about the way our words either heal or scar the people who raised us. There is a kind of wound that does not bleed, yet stays in the heart for many years. It is the wound made by a child's voice when that voice becomes cold, rushed, irritated, or dismissive. Many parents do not suffer only because their children fail to give them money, food, medicine, or a comfortable place to sleep. Some suffer because, after giving their whole youth to raising a family, they now have to listen to the people they love speak to them as if they are a burden. A bowl of rice can fill the stomach, but a harsh word can empty the heart. A warm house can protect the body, but an impatient tone can make an old mother feel homeless inside her own family. A child may buy expensive gifts, pay bills on time, arrange doctor appointments, and still, without noticing, make the parent feel small through the way they speak. This is why filial piety must go deeper than outward duty. It must enter the voice. It must soften the eyes. It must be present in the moment when our mother asks the same question again, or our father tells the same story for the 10th time, or they misunderstand something that seems so simple to us. When parents grow old, they often change in ways that test our patience. They may become slower. They may worry too much. They may ask about things we have already explained many times. They may forget where they put their glasses, forget how to use a phone, forget the names of applications, forget which button to press, forget what day it is. Sometimes they repeat a story from 30 years ago, as if they have just discovered it. Sometimes they ask whether we have eaten, not once, but again and again, until we feel tired of answering. Sometimes they speak loudly because their hearing has weakened. Sometimes they become sensitive, easily hurt, easily afraid. And if we look only at the surface, we may become annoyed. We may think, why are they like this now? Why can't they understand? Why do they keep bothering me? But if we look more deeply, with the eyes of compassion, we may see something else. Beneath the repetition, there may be loneliness. Beneath the worry, there may be fear. Beneath the simple questions, there may be a quiet longing to remain connected to us. They ask not only because they need information. Sometimes they ask because they need to hear our voice. They repeat not only because memory is weak. Sometimes they repeat because the past is the place where they still feel useful, strong, and alive. An aging parent's heart can be very fragile. They may not say it directly, but inside they often wonder, am I still needed? Am I still respected? Do my children still have time for me? Or am I slowly being moved to the side of their lives? So when a child answers with irritation, when a child says, I told you already, or you never understand, or why are you so slow? Those words may fall into the parent's heart like stones. The parent may smile and stay quiet. They may pretend it does not matter. They may even say it's okay. I'm old now, but inside, a small sadness gathers. In the teaching of the Buddha, speech is never considered something small. Speech is karma. Speech is action. Speech can create peace or create suffering. Speech can bring people closer or push them apart. Right speech is not merely speaking politely in public or using beautiful words with strangers. Right speech begins at home, where our habits are most exposed, where our irritation rises most easily, where we often think love gives us permission to be careless. The Buddha taught that words should be truthful, gentle, timely, beneficial, and spoken with a mind of goodwill. If we bring this teaching into the family, it becomes a lamp. Truthful speech means we do not deceive our parents, but honesty does not need to be cruel. Gentle speech means we do not use our knowledge, strength, or independence as a weapon against their aging. Timely speech means we know when to explain, when to comfort, when to be silent, and when to simply listen. Beneficial speech means our words should help the other person feel clearer, calmer, and less afraid. And speech spoken with a mind of care means that before we open our mouth, we remember who is standing before us. not an inconvenience, not an obstacle, but the very people whose lives were tied to ours from the beginning. There were years when we did not know how to speak at all. We cried in the night, and they woke up. We asked childish questions, and they answered. We made mistakes, spilled food, broke things, moved slowly, misunderstood everything, and still they held us. We repeated the same word again, and they smiled. We demanded attention at inconvenient times, and they came. Perhaps they were not perfect. No parent is perfect, but many of them gave more patience to our weakness than we now give to theirs. This is a painful mirror. When we were young, our slowness was called innocence. When they grow old, their slowness is often called annoyance. When we repeated questions, people laughed with tenderness. When they repeat questions, we sometimes sigh. When we could not understand the world, they taught us step by step. When they cannot understand our world, we may say, "Forget it, you won't get it." If we see this clearly, not to blame ourselves, but to awaken, then our voice can begin to change. Instead of saying, "You never understand," we can say, "Let me explain again." Instead of saying, "Why are you so slow?" we can say, "Take your time, I'm here." Instead of saying, "I already told you," we can say, "Yes, I'll remind you." Instead of saying, "Don't bother me," we can say, "I'm busy in a few minutes." These changes may seem small, but in the heart of an aging parent, they are not small. They are offerings. They are flowers placed, not on an altar made of wood or stone, but on the living altar of our family. Sometimes we believe offerings must be grand. We imagine incense, candles, ceremonies, donations, solemn prayers. But a gentle answer at the right moment can be a sacred offering. A patient explanation can be an act of worship. Listening to an old story without showing contempt can be a form of bowing. Calling our parents by a tender name, asking if they are tired, thanking them for something from long ago, lowering our voice when irritation rises. These are not ordinary things. They are the practice of the Dhamma in the most intimate place. If we can speak gently to a respected teacher, but harshly to our mother, our practice is still incomplete. If we can bow before a Buddha image, but cannot answer our Father without resentment, our bow has not yet reached the heart. The Buddha's path is not separate from the kitchen, the living room, the hospital bed, the phone call, the daily conversation. The path appears exactly when our patience is tested. It appears when we are tired and someone asks again. It appears when we feel superior, because we understand modern life better than they do. It appears when we have the power to wound, but choose to protect. Of course, gentle speech does not mean we never set boundaries. It does not mean we must agree with everything or allow harmful behavior or hide the truth. The Dharma does not ask us to become false. It asks us to become awake. There is a way to say no without humiliating. There is a way to correct without insulting. There is a way to explain without making the other person feel stupid. There is a way to be honest without forgetting love. A child can say, "Mother, I understand you are worried, but I need you to trust me." A child can say, "Father, I hear what you're saying, but this way is safer." A child can say, "I cannot do it at this exact moment, but I have not forgotten you." Such words carry firmness, but not cruelty. They protect both sides. They allow the child to remain responsible without becoming resentful. And they allow the parent to feel respected even when they are corrected. The tone matters. Sometimes the words themselves are not terrible, but the tone carries poison. A short answer can feel like a slap if it is filled with contempt. A simple instruction can feel like rejection if it is spoken with disgust. Our parents may not understand every new device, every new idea, every change in the world, but they understand tone. They can feel when they are being tolerated rather than welcomed. They can feel when their child is physically present, but emotionally far away. Many parents will not ask for gentle speech. They will ask whether we have eaten. They will ask when we are coming home. They will ask if we are healthy. if work is difficult, if the weather is cold. But behind all those ordinary questions, there is another question they may be too shy to speak. Do you still love me with patience? And every time we answer, our voice gives them an answer. If we answer with irritation, we say, without saying it directly, you are too much for me. If we answer with indifference, we say, your presence does not matter. But if we answer with care, even briefly, we say, you still belong in my heart. This is why the voice can become an offering. It carries not only sound, but intention. It carries memory. It carries gratitude or forgetfulness. It carries the fragrance of compassion or the smoke of anger. And we must remember, the words we give to our parents do not disappear. They become seeds in our own mind. Every harsh word strengthens the habit of harshness. Every contemptuous tone makes contempt easier next time. Every impatient answer builds a home where everyone becomes afraid to speak. But every gentle word plants a different seed. It trains the heart in humility. It makes peace more possible. It turns the home into a place where old age does not feel like exile. One day, the chair where our mother sits may be empty. One day, the footsteps of our father may no longer move slowly through the house. One day, the phone may no longer ring with the same familiar questions. And then, strangely, the very things that irritated us may become the things we miss. We may long to hear that repeated story one more time. We may wish someone would ask whether we have eaten. We may look at an old message and realize that behind those simple words was a love that did not know how to stop reaching for us. Regret often begins with remembering our own voice. We remember the last time we were impatient, the time we turned away, the time we spoke sharply because we were tired, busy, proud, or careless. We may tell ourselves we provided enough, we did our duty, we were there when it mattered. But the heart knows that small moments mattered too. The heart knows that love was asking to be expressed, not only in money and responsibility, but in tone, in patience, in listening. So before the day of regret comes, we can practice now. We can breathe once before reacting. We can notice the old habit rising, the sigh, the sharp, the urge to say, you don't understand. And in that tiny space, we can choose another path. We can choose to speak as someone who remembers. We can choose to speak as someone who knows that time is passing. We can choose to let our voice become a cup of warm water in the hands of our parents. This practice is not always easy. Some days we will fail. We may still become irritated. We may still speak too quickly, too loudly, too coldly, but when we see it, we can return, we can apologize. A sincere apology from a child can heal much more than pride ever can. To say, I'm sorry I spoke harshly, is not weakness. It is filial piety with courage. It tells the parent, your heart matters to me. I do not want my carelessness to become your suffering. In this way, speech becomes a daily path. Every conversation is a chance to repay a little of what cannot be fully repaid. Every answer is a chance to protect dignity. Every gentle word is a lamp lit in the house of gratitude. We do not have to wait until our parents are lying ill to become tender. We do not have to wait until funerals to speak with love. We do not have to wait until silence takes their voice away before we understand the value of our own. To be filial is to hear our name called and answer with respect. To be filial is to let our parents ask without fear. To be filial is to explain one more time, listen one more time, soften one more time. It is to understand that the people who once bent down to hear our first words now need us to raise our speech to the level of compassion. Gentle words are essential, yet there are moments when love requires even more, the courage to forgive what was imperfect in our parents. But forgiveness is not always simple. For some people, the word parents does not immediately bring warmth. It brings a tightness in the chest. It brings memories that were never spoken aloud. It brings the echo of harsh words, doors closing, cold meals, long silences, or the feeling of growing up in a house where love existed. but did not know how to express itself gently. There are children who were never beaten by hands, but were wounded by sentences. Why are you so useless? Look at other people's children. You always disappoint me. Words like these can remain in the mind for many years. Even when the child becomes an adult, earns a living, builds a family and smiles in public, somewhere inside, that small child is still waiting to be embraced, still waiting for one sentence. I am proud of you. I am sorry. I did not know how to love you better. There are children who grew up in poverty, watching their parents struggle, but also receiving the frustration that poverty created. A father tired from work may have brought home not only wages but anger. A mother anxious about debt may have spoken with sharpness instead of tenderness. In such homes, love was mixed with fear, care was mixed with pressure, sacrifice was real, but so was pain. There are also children whose parents were absent, not always physically but emotionally. The parent was in the house, but far away, sitting at the table but unreachable, providing food, paying school fees, doing what society called responsible, yet never asking, are you lonely? Are you afraid? What is happening inside your heart? And so the child learned to survive by becoming quiet, by not needing too much, by not asking for comfort, by becoming strong too early. When we speak of filial piety, we must speak honestly about these wounds. If we only say, be grateful to your parents, without seeing the tears that some children carry, our teaching becomes incomplete. It may even become another burden placed upon an already tired heart. Buddhism does not ask us to pretend that suffering did not happen. The Buddha never taught us to cover pain with beautiful words. He taught us to look deeply, to understand suffering as it truly is, and from that understanding, to find freedom. So let us be clear. To be filial does not mean denying your pain. It does not mean saying that everything your parents did was right. It does not mean excusing cruelty, abuse, neglect, humiliation, or harm. It does not mean you must stay in a situation that breaks your mind, your body, or your spirit. Compassion without wisdom can become self-destruction. Patience without boundaries can become silent suffering. Forgiveness without understanding can become a mask. The path of the Buddha is not blind endurance. It is not allowing harm to continue in the name of virtue. The Buddha praised compassion, but he also praised wisdom. He praised kindness, but he also taught careful discernment. If fire is burning, we do not prove our love by putting our hand deeper into the flame. We step back. We protect life. We prevent greater suffering. And from a safe distance, if possible, we cultivate a mind that is no longer poisoned by hatred. This is very important. Sometimes the most filial thing a person can do is to stop repeating the family's suffering. Sometimes it means speaking respectfully, but not allowing insults to enter the heart. Sometimes it means helping financially, but not becoming trapped in manipulation. Sometimes it means visiting for a short time, instead of staying long enough for old wounds to reopen. Sometimes it means saying with calmness, I love you, but I cannot accept being spoken to that way. Such words are not unfilial. They may be the beginning of a more truthful love. In Buddhist practice, forgiveness is not forced emotion. It is not an order we give to the heart. Forgive now. Forget now. Smile now. The heart does not heal by command. It heals by being understood. It heals slowly, like a wound that needs clean air, medicine, and time. If someone says, I cannot forgive my parents yet, we should not rush to judge them. Perhaps they are still carrying a grief that has never been witnessed. Perhaps forgiveness will come one day. But today the first step is simply to stop hating themselves for not being ready. The Buddha's compassion was never shallow. He looked at suffering from many directions. When we look at our parents, we often see only the role they played in our lives: father, mother, provider, authority, caretaker, source of comfort, or source of pain. But if we look more deeply, we may begin to see that before they were our parents, they too were children. They too had small hands. They too once waited to be loved. They too may have been scolded, abandoned, beaten, compared, or silenced. They too may have grown up in a world where no one taught them how to speak gently, how to apologize, how to listen, how to hold a child's sadness without turning it into anger. This understanding does not erase what happened to us. It does not say, because they suffered, your pain does not matter. No, your pain matters. What was wrong remains wrong. But understanding can loosen the knot of hatred. It can help us see that much of what hurt us did not begin with us. It came from a long river of ignorance, fear, poverty, trauma, and unhealed wounds flowing through generations. Maybe your father never said "I love you" because his father never said it to him. Maybe your mother controlled everything because her own life had been filled with uncertainty. Maybe your parents criticized you because they believed pressure was the only way to help you survive. Maybe they did not know how to comfort you because no one had ever comforted them. They gave what they had, and sometimes what they had was mixed, limited, clumsy, and painful. Seeing this does not make all things acceptable, but it may make them understandable. And when something becomes understandable, hatred begins to lose its sharpest edge. We may still need boundaries. We may still need distance. We may still grieve what we never received, but we no longer have to carry the burning coal of resentment everywhere we go. There is a kind of gratitude that is immature, and there is a kind of gratitude that is mature. Immature gratitude says, because my parents gave me life, I must deny everything that hurt me. Mature gratitude says, I can recognize the life I received, and I can also recognize the wounds I carry. I do not need to lie about either one. This mature gratitude is very powerful. It allows us to say, my parents were imperfect. They lacked wisdom in many moments. They hurt me in ways they may never fully understand. But through them this human life came to me. Through this body, I can breathe, learn, love, practice, transform, and awaken. I do not have to approve of every action in order to honor the precious opportunity of being alive. In Buddhism, human life is considered rare and precious, not because every life is easy, but because every life contains the possibility of awakening. Even a painful childhood can become the ground of deep compassion if we know how to practice. Even old wounds can become doors to understanding. Even the family line, heavy with sorrow, can change direction through one person who chooses not to pass bitterness forward. That person may be you. Perhaps you received anger, but you can choose not to hand anger to your children. Perhaps you received silence, but you can choose to speak warmth. Perhaps you received criticism, but you can choose encouragement. Perhaps no one apologized to you, but you can become someone who knows how to say, I was wrong. This is also filial piety, not only serving your parents' tea, not only giving them money, not only bowing at their feet, but transforming the suffering you inherited so that it does not continue endlessly. Sometimes we imagine filial piety as something performed outwardly, cooking for parents, caring for them when they are sick, obeying their requests, bringing them comfort in old age. These are beautiful and important, but there is another form of filial piety that happens deep inside the heart. It is the practice of purifying our relationship with our own origins. It is the quiet decision, I will not let the pain of my family make me cruel. I will not let what I lacked become the reason I destroy myself or others. I will learn to love more wisely than I was loved. For those whose parents are difficult, balanced filial practice may look very simple. It may be answering the phone with a calm voice, even if you cannot speak for long. It may be sending medicine or food, even if living together is impossible. It may be visiting on important days, but leaving before the conversation becomes harmful. It may be helping with what is necessary, while not sacrificing your own family, health, or dignity. It may be speaking respectfully, not because the other person always deserves perfect praise, but because you have chosen not to let bitterness control your mouth. Kind speech does not mean false speech. You do not have to say, "Everything is fine," when it is not. You can be honest without being cruel. You can be firm without hatred. You can say, "I hear you, but I need time." You can say, "I want to help, but I cannot do that." You can say, "I respect you as my parent, but this conversation is hurting me, so I will stop here." Such speech requires strength. It is much easier to explode or disappear. To remain calm and clear is already a deep practice. And if forgiveness feels far away, begin with something smaller. Begin with the wish not to be consumed by resentment. Begin with breathing. Begin with seeing your parents as human beings, not only as the people who failed you. Begin with one memory that contains even a little care, a meal prepared, a school fee paid, a night they stayed awake when you were sick, a moment they worried but did not know how to show it tenderly. If no such memory comes easily, then begin simply with the fact that through them life reached you. That alone may be enough for the first step. Forgiveness, in the Buddhist sense, is not always reconciliation. Some relationships cannot return to closeness. Some parents may never admit their mistakes. Some conversations may never happen. Some wounds may never receive the apology they deserved. But forgiveness can still mean that we stop allowing the past to rule the present. It can mean we no longer rehearse the same pain every night. It can mean we release the wish to punish, to prove, to make them suffer as we suffered. It can mean we put down a burden that has been burning our own hands. There are people who wait their whole lives for their parents to change before they allow themselves peace. But what if they never change? What if old age makes them even more stubborn? What if they leave this world without ever saying the words we needed? Must our heart remain imprisoned forever? The Buddha's path invites us to reclaim freedom now. Not by pretending, not by suppressing, but by understanding deeply enough that we no longer let another person's ignorance become the ruler of our life. And sometimes, when we soften even a little, something unexpected happens. We begin to notice the fragile side of the parent we once feared. The loud voice becomes weaker. The hands that once seemed so powerful begin to tremble. The eyes that once looked at us with judgment now carry confusion, loneliness, or regret. Time humbles everyone. The parent who could not say sorry may show remorse by asking if we have eaten. The parent who never hugged us may leave fruit at the door. The parent who never praised us may quietly tell a neighbor about our accomplishments. Their love may still be clumsy, but if we look carefully, we may find that beneath the clumsiness, there was always a human being, trying, failing, fearing, and not knowing how to do better. To forgive imperfect parents is not to rewrite the past. It is to meet the past with a larger heart. It is to say, I see the suffering, I see the ignorance, I see the harm, and I also see the conditions that created it. I will protect myself where protection is needed. I will keep boundaries where boundaries are wise, but I will not add more hatred to this inheritance. This is a noble form of filial piety. It is not sentimental. It is not weak. It is courageous because it holds both truth and compassion at the same time. It refuses to choose between self-respect and gratitude. It refuses to choose between honesty and love. It understands that the deepest practice is often not performed in temples, but in the difficult spaces of family, memory, and the heart. If your parents are still alive, perhaps there is still time to practice in small ways, not all at once. Just one step, a softer tone, a shorter resentment, a boundary made without cruelty, a meal offered without reopening every old wound, a prayer for their peace, even if closeness is not possible. If they have already passed away, the practice is still possible. You can speak to them inwardly. You can release what you are ready to release. You can live in a way that transforms what they could not transform. In the end, filial piety is not only about what we do for our parents when they are old. It is about how we relate to the life that has been handed to us. Will we hold it with bitterness or with awakening? Will we repeat the suffering or transform it? Will we wait until regret becomes too heavy, or begin now, with wisdom and compassion together? When we understand this balance, our heart becomes ready to receive one of the most touching examples in the Buddhist tradition, the story of Venerable Sariputta, a great disciple of the Buddha, and the profound filial devotion he showed toward his mother. Among the great disciples of the Buddha, there was one whose name became almost inseparable from wisdom. He was Venerable Sariputta, known in the ancient texts as the foremost in wisdom, the one whose understanding was deep, clear, and vast, like a calm lake reflecting the moon. If the Buddha was the supreme teacher, Sariputta was like a noble general of the Dhamma, able to explain the path with such precision and kindness that many hearts found direction through his words. And yet, behind the reverence that surrounded him, behind the robes, the serenity, and the honor given to him by kings, monks, nuns, and lay followers, there remained a very human tenderness. Sariputta had a mother. Her name was Rupasari, and though her son had become one of the greatest saints in the Buddha's dispensation, she herself had not yet opened her heart to the Dhamma. This is what makes the story so close to us, because sometimes the person admired by the world is still misunderstood at home. Sometimes a child may grow in virtue, sincerity, and wisdom, yet the parent who once held that child in their arms cannot see the beauty of the path they have chosen. The world may bow in respect, but the mother may still worry, complain, or feel disappointed. To outsiders, Sariputta was a noble arahant, a liberated disciple, but to Rupasari he was still her son, the boy she had raised, the child she expected to follow a certain life, honor certain traditions, and perhaps fulfill certain worldly hopes. Before he became Sariputta the chief disciple, he was born into a respected Brahmin family in the village of Nalaka. His personal name was Upatissa, and from an early age he was known for intelligence, refinement, and a searching spirit. He was not a careless young man. He was not satisfied with shallow pleasures. Together with his close friend Kolita, who would later become Venerable Moggallana, he looked deeply at life and saw something that many people try not to see. Youth fades, possessions scatter, loved ones separate, and every celebration is shadowed by impermanence. One day, while attending a festival, they looked at the crowds laughing, dancing, and rejoicing, but instead of being swept away by the excitement, they saw the fragile nature of it all. Those faces would age, those bodies would sicken, those voices would one day fall silent. In their hearts arose the question that begins all true spiritual seeking. Is there a way out of suffering? Is there something beyond this endless turning? That question led them away from ordinary ambition. It led them into spiritual search, and eventually, through meeting the monk Assaji, Sariputta heard a short verse that opened the door of the Dhamma in his heart. The verse was simple, but for one whose wisdom was ripe, it was enough. It pointed to causes and conditions, to arising and ceasing, to the truth that all things that come into being pass away. Upon hearing this, Sariputta attained the first stage of awakening. Soon after, he and Moggallana went to meet the Buddha, entered the Sangha, and became two of the Blessed One's chief disciples. Sariputta's greatness did not lie only in sharp intelligence. Many people are intelligent, but their intelligence becomes pride. Many people can speak well, but their words cut others. Sariputta's wisdom was different. It was joined with humility. It was softened by compassion. It was guided by deep realization. He could teach profound truths in a way that ordinary people could understand. He could guide monks who were confused, comfort those who struggled, and clarify the Dhamma without making others feel small. The Buddha praised him highly. He was compared to a loving mother who gives birth to spiritual life in others, while Moggallana was compared to a nurse who helps them grow. Sariputta could take a person from confusion to understanding, from scattered effort to steady practice. His speech was not decoration, it was medicine. His wisdom was not cold, it was luminous, and yet his mother did not rejoice in this as others did. Rupasari was attached to the beliefs and customs of her Brahmin background. She had her own faith, her own expectations, her own way of seeing the world. To her, perhaps, the Buddha's path was not the noble truth her son had found, but a departure from the family's tradition. Maybe she wondered why a son of such brilliance had chosen a life without possessions, without family status, without the honors that society could have offered him. Maybe she felt that he had abandoned the path she had imagined for him. A mother's disappointment can take many shapes. Sometimes it becomes anger. Sometimes it becomes criticism. Sometimes it hides beneath pride. Sometimes it becomes a quiet grief. My child has gone somewhere I cannot follow. This is not difficult to understand. Even today, many people who choose a life of goodness, simplicity, or spiritual practice are not immediately understood by their families. A son becomes more gentle, but his parents ask why he is no longer ambitious in the old way. A daughter chooses honesty over wealth, and her family fears she will suffer. A young person begins to meditate, practice compassion, avoid harmful actions, and speak less harshly, but the parents may think, "Why are you changing? Why are you different from before?" Sometimes parents do not reject virtue itself. They reject the unfamiliar form it takes. And for the child, this can be painful. It is painful when strangers appreciate your sincerity, but your own family doubts you. It is painful when you want to share something healing, but the person you love turns away. It is painful when you have found a path that brings peace to your heart, yet your parent sees only loss, danger, or betrayal. In such moments, many people are tempted to argue. They want to prove themselves. They want to win recognition. They want to say, "You do not understand me, you are wrong. I know better now." But Sariputta did not respond in that way. This is the quiet greatness of his filial heart. Although his mother did not fully accept the Dhamma, he did not despise her. Although she may have spoken harshly or held tightly to opposing views, he did not treat her as an enemy. Although he had attained liberation and stood among the greatest disciples of the Buddha, he did not look down on the woman who gave birth to him. His wisdom did not erase his gratitude. His awakening did not make him cold. His freedom did not become arrogance. He understood something very important. Each person opens according to conditions. A flower cannot be forced to bloom by pulling at its petals. A fruit cannot be sweetened by anger. A mind that is not ready cannot be awakened by pride, even if the words spoken are true. Truth offered without compassion can feel like a weapon. Spoken with impatience may close the very heart it hopes to open. So Sariputta waited. He carried within him a compassionate intention. He knew the value of the Dhamma. He knew that if his mother could truly understand even a glimpse of it, it would bring her benefit beyond anything worldly success could give. But he also knew that timing matters. The right words spoken at the wrong time may not be heard. The deepest teaching given to a resistant heart may become only another reason for conflict. So instead of forcing, he remained patient. Instead of arguing, he preserved love. Instead of abandoning her, he kept the wish to help her when the conditions ripened. This patience is not weakness. In Buddhism, patience is one of the great strengths of the heart. It is easy to react. It is easy to cut people off in the name of truth. It is easy to say, "If you cannot understand me, I will leave you behind." But true compassion is more spacious than that. It does not mean we allow harm. It does not mean we surrender our path. It means we do not let another person's misunderstanding destroy our love. Sariputta had left home, but he had not left gratitude. He had renounced worldly attachment, but he had not renounced compassion for his mother. He had gone beyond the narrow identity of my family and my people. Yet precisely because his heart was vast, it included those nearest to him as well. This is a subtle teaching for all of us. Sometimes, when people begin spiritual practice, they become gentle with strangers but impatient with family. They can speak kindly to a friend, but answer their mother with irritation. They can offer compassion to the suffering of the world, but when their father gives advice, they roll their eyes. They can bow before a teacher, but cannot respond softly when a parent calls their name. This is why the teaching on filial respect is so practical. It asks us not to wait for grand gestures. It asks us to look at the small moments. When a parent calls, do we answer with warmth or annoyance? When they ask for help, do we delay until they feel like a burden? When they misunderstand us, do we immediately attack, or can we breathe and respond with steadiness? Of course, not every family situation is simple. Some parents carry wounds, some speak in ways that hurt, some cling to control, some cannot easily bless the path of their children. The Dhamma never asks us to be foolish. Wisdom includes boundaries, compassion includes clarity, but even when closeness must be limited, hatred does not have to be fed. Even when we cannot obey every wish, we can avoid contempt. Even when parents do not understand our path, we can still remember the debt of life, the years of care, the conditions through which this body and this opportunity came to be. Sariputta's relationship with his mother shows us that filial piety is not always a scene of harmony. Sometimes it is an unspoken vow held quietly in the heart. May I help you one day. May your suffering lessen. May you find peace, even if today you do not understand. There is a deep tenderness in this. It is the love that does not demand immediate appreciation. It is the love that does not turn bitter when misunderstood. It is the love that trusts the slow ripening of karma, conditions and time. Think about how many people carry this same ache. A child wants their parents to stop worrying, but every conversation becomes tension. A daughter wishes her mother could understand her choices, but receives criticism instead. A son wants to guide his father toward a healthier, kinder life, but the father refuses to listen. And because the people are so close, the pain becomes sharper. It is often easier to be patient with strangers than with those whose words reach the deepest places in us. Yet the story of Sariputta teaches, do not confuse difficulty with failure. Just because your parent does not understand today does not mean your love is useless. Just because they resist your words does not mean your conduct has no influence. Sometimes the teaching you give is not a sermon. It is your patience. It is your honesty. It is your refusal to repay harshness with harshness. It is your steady life, lived with integrity, until one day the person who doubted you begins to wonder where your peace comes from. The deepest filial offering is not always money, food, or physical care, though these are important. Sometimes the deepest offering is to become a person through whom your parents can encounter goodness. If you practice the Dhamma, let them see that practice has made you more humble, not more proud, more grateful, not more distant, more reliable, not more careless, more tender, not more judgmental. If our spirituality makes us look down on our parents, then we have misunderstood the path. But if it helps us listen more deeply, serve more willingly, and forgive more wisely, then even without many words we are already offering them a blessing. Sariputta, the master of wisdom, understood this. He did not need to defeat his mother in debate. He did not need to prove that he was spiritually superior. He did not measure his love by whether she praised him. He simply kept the door of compassion open. And perhaps that is one of the hardest things to do, to keep loving without forcing, to keep wishing someone well without controlling their journey, to keep honoring a parent even when their mind has not yet softened. Filial love, when guided by wisdom, does not become blind obedience, but neither does it become cold independence. It walks a middle path. It knows when to speak and when to be silent. It knows when to serve and when to step back. It knows that the aim is not to win, but to relieve suffering. In the Buddhist tradition, Sariputta's mother remained unconvinced for many years. while countless others benefited from her son's wisdom. She still stood outside the stream of his realization. This contrast is deeply moving. The light that shone so far had not yet illuminated the room of his own mother's heart. And yet Sariputta did not give up. He knew that the greatest gift he could offer her was not status, not wealth, not the return of a son to household life, not an argument that proved his point. The greatest gift would be the Dhamma itself, received at a moment when her heart could finally open. For a son who had gone beyond birth and death, there was no treasure more precious to place before his mother than the possibility of liberation. But such a moment had to come in its own time, and it came near the end of his life. When Venerable Sariputta's final days approached, his heart turned toward the woman who had given him birth. He did not return home seeking comfort. He did not return to be praised. He did not return because he was attached to the old house or the memories of childhood. He returned with one last act of filial compassion, to offer his mother the greatest gift a son on the path could give. By then, Venerable Sariputta was no longer a young seeker walking away from home, with questions burning in his heart. He was the chief disciple of the Buddha, praised for his wisdom, respected by kings, loved by monks, trusted by lay people, and honored throughout the land as one who understood the Dhamma with extraordinary clarity. Wherever the Buddha's teaching spread, Sariputta's gentle voice had helped open the way. He had guided the confused, encouraged the weak, corrected the careless, comforted the grieving, and illuminated the path for countless hearts. Yet when he felt the nearness of his final passing, his mind did not turn toward fame. It did not turn toward the monasteries where people bowed at his feet. It did not turn toward the great assemblies where his words had once flowed like a clear river. His heart turned quietly toward one place, one house, one aging mother, Nalaka, the village of his birth, the home where he had first opened his eyes to the world. There is something deeply moving in this image. A great saint, one who had gone beyond worldly pride, looking back not with attachment, but with gratitude. The road he wished to walk at the end was not a road toward honor, but a road toward his mother's door. Sariputta understood that his body was nearing its final days. The life force that had carried him through decades of service was becoming thin, like the last flame of a lamp before dawn. But his mind was bright, peaceful and unshaken. He did not fear death. He did not cling to life. For one who had realized the deathless, final passing was not a tragedy. It was simply the end of all burden. Still, before that final release, there remained one compassionate intention in him. His mother. She had given him birth. She had carried him in her womb. She had fed him when he could not feed himself. She had watched him grow from a child into a brilliant young man. And then, from her point of view, she had lost him to the robe, to the forest, to the Buddha's path. Although the world honored him as a noble disciple, a mother's heart does not always see as the world sees. To others, he was Venerable Sariputta. To her, he was still her son, the boy who had once belonged to her household, the one whose future she may have imagined in worldly terms. So Sariputta went to the Blessed One. With reverence, he approached the Buddha, bowed, and requested permission to return to his native village. He knew the time had come. He knew he would not be returning again and again. This was not a casual visit. It was not a son going home for rest. It was a final journey made with full awareness, full tenderness, and full purpose. The Buddha, who understood the minds and conditions of being, gave his consent. There was no need for many words. Between the Buddha and Sariputta, much could be understood in silence. The teacher knew the disciple's heart. The disciple knew the teacher's compassion. And so Sariputta set out toward Nalaka, accompanied by attendants, with the calm dignity of one who had completed the path. Imagine that road. He had walked many roads before. Roads to royal cities, where kings listened to the Dhamma. Roads to villages, where farmers and merchants gathered with folded hands. Roads through forests where monks asked questions beneath the shade of trees. Roads beside rivers, across dusty plains, into crowded settlements and quiet hermitages. But this road was different. This road led backward in memory, while his spirit moved forward toward final freedom. Each step brought him closer to the place where his life had begun. The fields may have looked familiar. The air may have carried the scent of earth and home. Perhaps there were trees he had seen as a child, paths where he had once walked, before he knew suffering deeply, before he knew liberation, before he met the Buddha. The world changes, and yet certain places hold echoes. A doorway, a courtyard, the corner of a room, the sound of household movement at dusk. These things can stir memories even in ordinary hearts. But Sariputta did not return as one bound by memory. He returned as one who had purified memory through wisdom. He was not coming back to reclaim the past. He was coming back to bless it. This is the humility of the awakened life. Wisdom did not make him forget where he came from. Enlightenment did not make him cold. Detachment did not mean indifference. Sometimes we misunderstand spiritual practice and imagine that to be free means to stop caring. But Sariputta shows another truth. To be free is to care without clinging, to love without selfishness, to return without being trapped, to serve without asking anything in return. He had nothing to gain from his mother in the worldly sense. What could she give him? Wealth? He had renounced wealth, praise. He had gone beyond the hunger for praise. Comfort. His peace did not depend on a bed, a house, or soft words. He was about to leave behind even the body. There was no bargain in his return, no hidden desire, no expectation that she should finally admire him, approve of him, or confess that he had chosen correctly. He came for her. He came because a mother's heart, however stubborn, however proud, however wounded, is still capable of awakening. He came because time was short. He came because compassion does not delay when it knows that a door may soon close. When word spread that Sariputta had returned, the atmosphere around the old home must have become charged with feeling. For the villagers, this was no ordinary son coming back. This was the great disciple, the one whose wisdom was renowned, returning to the very place where he had once been a child. Some may have felt awe, some may have felt curiosity, some may have remembered him from long ago and wondered how the boy of Nalaka had become such a radiant elder. But inside the house, the feeling was more complicated. His mother was not simply a devotee waiting with flowers and tears. She was a mother with history. She had pride. She had opinions. She had old disappointments that may not have fully healed. Perhaps she still felt that her son had abandoned the family way. Perhaps she could not understand why one so gifted had chosen the life of a monk. Perhaps she heard others praise him and felt both proud and hurt at the same time. This is very human. A mother can be proud of her child and still feel pain because that child did not follow the path she imagined. She can hear the world call him noble and still remember the day he left home. She can see him sitting in the robe of a renunciant and still, somewhere deep inside, see the small child whose hands she once held. Love is not always simple. It carries tenderness, expectation, fear, and sometimes possessiveness. And when those things are mixed together, even a noble son may be difficult for a mother to truly see. Sariputta understood this. He did not come home demanding reverence. He did not say, "Mother, do you know who I am now?" He did not insist that she look at him as others did. He allowed her to be as she was. This, too, is filial piety at its highest level. Not merely obeying when it is easy, not merely offering food and medicine, but meeting a parent's heart with patience. Even when that heart is difficult for many of us, the hardest place to practice kindness is not in public, but at home. We can speak gently to strangers, but become sharp with our parents. We can be patient with colleagues, but impatient when our mother repeats herself. We can show respect to teachers, bosses, and guests, Yet answer our Father with irritation when he asks a simple thing, why? Because at home, old habits rise quickly. We feel too familiar. We assume we have time. We think, they will understand. But often the people closest to us receive the least careful part of our speech. Sariputta's return teaches the opposite. He brought his highest wisdom back to the lowest, simplest place, the family home. He did not reserve compassion only for disciples. He did not offer patience only to kings and monks. He brought it to his mother, who may have been the very person most difficult for him to reach. That is why this final visit is so powerful. The chief disciple of the Buddha, after a lifetime of teaching others, came back to teach the one who had given him life, not because she lacked value if she did not understand, not because he wanted to win a debate, but because he saw her suffering. He saw that beneath pride there was fear. Beneath skepticism there was attachment. Beneath a mother's resistance, there was a heart still turning in the wheel of birth and death. And he wanted to help her before he left. Think of the tenderness in that intention. He was near death, yet he was not absorbed in his own pain. He did not gather people around him merely to be cared for. He did not make his final days about himself. His body was weakening, but his compassion was strong. His time was short, but his purpose was clear. Before this life ended, he wished to offer his mother the Dhamma in a way she could finally receive. This is very different from the way we sometimes think of filial duty. We may believe that filial piety begins when parents are old, when they can no longer walk steadily, when their hands tremble, when they need us to bring water, cook rice, pay bills, or take them to the doctor. And yes, those acts are precious. To care for the body of one's parents with tenderness is a beautiful merit. To feed them, protect them, speak kindly to them, and stay near them when they are frail is something no good heart should neglect. But the Buddha's teaching points deeper. If we wait until our parents are lying weak before we begin to soften our voice, we have waited too long. If we only bow our heads after their hearing has faded, only regret our harsh words after their eyes are dim, only wish we had listened after their chair is empty, then our love has awakened late. Filial piety can begin now in the ordinary moments, when a mother calls and we answer gently, when a father asks for help and we do it without making him feel like a burden, when they say something imperfect and we do not immediately strike back with anger, when they ask us to do a small task and we do not sigh as though they have ruined our day, when they repeat old stories and we listen not because the story is new, but because love is renewed through listening. Sariputta's return was not sentimental. It was not merely a scene of a son visiting his aging mother. It was the meeting of gratitude and wisdom. He knew that to serve a parent only on the level of the body is good, but incomplete. The body must be fed, washed, sheltered, and comforted. But the heart also hungers. The heart also thirsts. The heart also grows afraid in the face of aging, sickness, separation, and death. What food can we give to that heart? We can give patience. We can give forgiveness. We can give truth spoken gently. We can give the example of a life becoming more peaceful, more honest, more compassionate. And if our parents are open, we can guide them toward wholesome teachings, toward generosity, virtue, mindfulness, and faith in what is good. Sariputta wanted to give his mother this kind of nourishment. He was not returning to ask why she had not understood him sooner. He was not returning to reopen the wounds of the past. He was returning to open a door. And perhaps that is one of the noblest things a child can do for a parent, to stop demanding that the parent become perfect before offering love. Sometimes our parents are difficult because they themselves have suffered. They may not know how to apologize. They may not know how to speak tenderly. They may carry the habits of their own parents, the fears of their own youth, the burdens of their own disappointments. To understand this does not mean we excuse every harm, but it does mean we look more deeply. We see not only the words they say, but the suffering behind those words. Sariputta saw deeply. He had seen into the nature of the body, feeling, perception, formations and consciousness. He had seen the arising and passing of all conditioned things. He knew that this woman called Mother was also a being wandering through samsara, longing for happiness, fearing loss, bound by views, shaped by love, pride and ignorance. And because he saw this, his compassion became even greater. How tender it is that enlightenment did not erase his gratitude. He could have entered final nibbana somewhere else, surrounded by monks who adored him. He could have remained near the Buddha, resting in the peace of the community. He could have allowed his mother to remain as she was, thinking, I have taught so many. If she does not believe, that is her karma. But his heart did not move in that direction. The debt of birth is not repaid by indifference. The debt of care is not repaid by forgetfulness. So the great elder returned home. The house that once sheltered his childhood now received him in his final days. The mother who once held him as an infant now stood before a son, whom even heavenly beings revered. Yet perhaps her heart still wavered. Perhaps she still measured him with the eyes of attachment. Perhaps she thought, this is my son not yet seeing. This is a liberated one. And Sariputta did not rush her. The Dhamma cannot be forced into a closed fist. A heart opens when the right conditions gather: timing, trust, humility, suffering, love, and truth. Sariputta had come to create those conditions. He came not to conquer his mother's mind, but to soften it. Not to defeat her pride, but to illuminate it. Not to make her bow to him, but to help her bow inwardly to the truth that frees. In that final return, we see a son who had nothing left to prove and everything left to give. We see a monk who had abandoned home, yet did not abandon gratitude. We see a sage who had gone beyond attachment, yet remained full of compassion. We see the meaning of filial piety lifted beyond custom, beyond obligation, beyond mere appearances. Because sometimes the highest way to love our parents is not only to keep them alive, but to help them live with a freer heart. And what happened in that final meaning shows us that the highest filial gift is not merely caring for the body, but guiding the heart toward freedom. By the time Venerable Sariputta sat before his mother, for the last time, he did not come with the fire of debate. He did not come to show that he was right and she had been wrong. He did not come as the chief disciple of the Buddha, crowned with wisdom, looking down upon an old woman still held by old beliefs. He came as a son, and perhaps that is why his words had power. There are truths that cannot enter a heart when they are thrown like stones. There are teachings that cannot be received when they are wrapped in pride. A parent may resist a child's advice, not because the advice is false, but because the child's tone carries impatience. A mother may turn away from wisdom, not because she hates wisdom, but because she feels judged by the one who offers it. So Sariputta, in that sacred meeting, did not speak like someone trying to win an argument. He spoke like someone repaying a debt of love. Imagine the quietness of that room. The great disciple had returned to the place where he was born, to the woman whose body had carried him, whose effort had raised him, whose hopes had once surrounded him. Outside, the world continued as usual. People walked, worked, worried, desired, and argued. But inside that simple space, something beyond ordinary family conversation was taking place. A mother and a son were standing at the edge of a deep crossing. One was nearing the end of his life. The other was being invited, gently, into the beginning of faith. Sariputta's mother had not always understood his path, to her perhaps. His renunciation had once looked like loss. A son who could have brought honor to the household had shaved his head, worn the robe, and walked away. A son who might have continued the family line had chosen homelessness. A son of brilliant mind and noble birth had bowed before the Buddha and become a monk. To a mother's heart, especially one rooted in worldly hopes, this may have been painful. She may have wondered why he had left, why he had chosen a life so different from what she imagined, why this teaching of the Buddha was worth more than household success. But in that final hour, Sariputta did not condemn her for not understanding. He did not say, "Mother, you were blind." He did not say, "Mother, you should have believed sooner." Instead, he offered the Dhamma in a way that only a grateful son could offer it, with patience, with tenderness, with truth that did not need to shout. This is one of the most beautiful things about true wisdom. It does not become harsh simply because it is clear. It does not become cold simply because it sees deeply. Sariputta was renowned for his insight, for his ability to explain the teaching with precision and depth. Yet when he taught his mother, the teaching was not merely intellectual. It was filial. It carried the warmth of a son who remembered. He remembered that before he could speak the Dhamma, she had taught him to speak. Before he could walk the path, she had held him when he could not walk at all. Before others called him wise, she had known him as a child. The robe did not erase that memory. Enlightenment did not erase gratitude. In fact, true enlightenment made gratitude even more complete. So he spoke to her of the Buddha. He spoke of the Blessed One, not as an idea to be defended, but as a refuge to be understood. He spoke of the Dhamma, not as a doctrine to be forced upon her, but as a medicine for the heart. He spoke of suffering, its cause, its ending, and the way leading to its ending. He spoke in the language of liberation, but also in the language of love. And slowly the mother's heart began to change. This transformation was not the drama of someone being defeated. It was not the collapse of a stubborn mind under pressure. It was more like a flower opening after a long night. For years, perhaps, resistance had guarded her heart, habit had guarded it, pride had guarded it, attachment to old views had guarded it. But now, in the presence of her son's calm compassion, those hard places softened. Sometimes the truth enters, not because we are forced to accept it, but because the person offering it has become trustworthy. Sariputta's mother could see before her not a rebellious son, not an ungrateful son, not a man who had abandoned family out of coldness. She could see the fruit of the path. She could see serenity. She could see humility. She could see a love that did not cling, yet did not disappear. She could see that the Buddha's teaching had not made her son less human. It had made him more gentle, more luminous, more free. And when the Dhamma was spoken in such a presence, her faith arose. According to Buddhist tradition, through hearing Sariputta's final teaching, his mother gained a noble glimpse of truth. Her heart entered the stream of the Dhamma. This is not merely a story of a mother becoming proud of her son. It is not merely a touching reunion before death. It is something far deeper. It is the story of a son helping his mother turn toward liberation. In ordinary life, we often think of repaying our parents in material terms. We want to buy them a comfortable house. We want to give them money, good food, medicine, warm clothes, a soft bed. These things are good, they are necessary, they are part of love. When parents are old, we should not neglect their bodies. When they are sick, we should not leave them alone. When they are hungry, we should feed them. When they are weak, we should support them. The Buddha never taught a cold spirituality that ignores physical care. But Sariputta's example shows that filial piety does not end with material care. A parent can sleep in a beautiful bed and still be tormented by regret. A parent can eat good food and still be consumed by anger. A parent can live in a large house and still fear death deeply. A parent can receive money from children every month and still carry a heart full of confusion, bitterness, loneliness, and sorrow. So what is the greatest gift a child can give? It is not only comfort. It is not only wealth. It is not only public honor. The greatest gift is to help our parents move closer to peace, to help them discover faith, virtue, generosity, mindfulness, and wisdom, to help them reduce the fires that burn within, to help them meet the final years of life not with terror, but with a heart that has learned to let go. This is why Sariputta's filial piety is so profound. He did not repay his mother merely by giving her things that perish. He offered her a path beyond perishing. He did not only serve her body, which was aging. He served her heart, which could awaken. He did not only bow to her as the woman who gave him birth. He helped her bow to the truth that leads beyond birth and death. For those of us listening today, this may feel far beyond our ability. We may think, I am not Sariputta. I am not enlightened. I cannot teach the Dhamma with such wisdom. I cannot lead my parents to noble attainment, and that is true. Most of us are ordinary people, still struggling with our own anger, impatience, ego, and fear. But the lesson is not that we must become great disciples before we can be good children. The lesson is that we must not reduce filial love to outward service alone. Even in simple ways, we can become a condition for our parents' peace. If our parents are generous, we can encourage their generosity. If they have faith, we can support their faith. If they like to pray, chant, meditate, or sit quietly, we can make space for that. If they are troubled by worry, we can speak gently and help them breathe. If they are caught in resentment, we can listen without feeding the resentment. If they are afraid of death, we can stay near them with kindness instead of avoiding the subject. If they are lonely, we can offer presence. If they are harsh, we can try not to answer harshness with harshness. If they have never known spiritual practice, we can begin by living in a way that makes goodness visible. Sometimes inviting a parent toward the path does not begin with words. It begins with how we answer when they call. It begins with whether our face is annoyed or warm. It begins with whether we keep our promises. It begins with whether we speak truthfully. It begins with whether we apologize. It begins with whether we can put down our phone when they are speaking. It begins with whether we can serve a bowl of food without making them feel like a burden. A child who practices kindness becomes a quiet teaching. A child who practices patience becomes a lamp in the home. A child who refrains from shouting, even when tired, teaches more than a lecture on compassion. A child who lives honestly teaches more than a sermon on morality. A child who gives, forgives, and remembers gratitude may awaken in the parent a question. What has made my child like this? And through that question, the door of faith may open. But here we must be very careful. To guide our parents spiritually does not mean we become arrogant. It does not mean we scold them in the name of religion. It does not mean we force them to believe what we believe. It does not mean we look at them and say, "You are ignorant, you must follow my path." That is not filial piety. That is ego wearing spiritual clothing. Many people, after learning a little about meditation, a little about karma, a little about scripture, begin to look down on their parents. They criticize how their parents pray. They mock their customs. They become impatient with old habits. They say, "You do not understand." They speak of compassion with a hard voice. They speak of wisdom with pride. They speak of non-attachment while being deeply attached to being right. This is not the way of Sariputta. Sariputta did not use truth as a weapon against his mother. He used truth as an offering. He did not stand above her. He knelt inwardly before the debt he owed her. His wisdom was not separated from reverence. His clarity was not separated from gratitude. If we wish to help our parents encounter the path, we must first become safe for them. Safe to speak to, safe to be weak around, safe to disagree with, safe to grow slowly. The older generation may carry wounds we do not know. They may have survived hunger, war, poverty, betrayal, or emotional hardship they never learned to name. Some parents express love awkwardly because no one loved them gently. Some cling to control because life once made them powerless. Some resist spiritual advice because they fear losing the world they understand. So if we bring the Dhamma to them, let us bring it like warm water, not like fire. Let us bring it through our conduct, not only our words. Let us invite, not command. Let us share, not impose. Let us be humble enough to know that even while we guide them in one area, we still owe them reverence in many others. A son may say to his mother, "Would you like me to take you to the temple?" A daughter may say to her father, "When you feel worried, maybe we can sit quietly together for a few minutes." A child may say, "I heard a teaching today that helped me be less angry. May I share it with you?" These words are small, but when spoken with respect, they can become seeds. And even if our parents do not accept what we share, we can still practice. We can dedicate merit to them. We can live morally for their sake. We can refrain from actions that bring shame and sorrow to their hearts. We can cultivate peace so that when they look at us, they feel less afraid of the path we walk. Because in the end, parents are not only listening to what we say, they are watching what we become. Sariputta's mother could receive the teaching because the teaching had become alive in her son. The Dhamma was not merely in his mouth, it was in his posture, his patience, his compassion, his return. He had left home long ago, but he returned with the greatest treasure. Not gold, not status, not worldly victory. He returned with liberating truth, offered at the moment it mattered most. This is a powerful reminder for every child. Do not wait until your parents are on their deathbed to become gentle. Do not wait until their hands tremble before you hold them with tenderness. Do not wait until their ears can no longer hear clearly before you speak kind words. Do not wait until the funeral to chant prayers with sincerity. If there is a path of goodness you hope they will trust, let them see it in you now. Let them see that great practice has made you more patient, not more proud, more grateful, not more distant, more responsible, not more careless, more loving, not more cold. Let them see that spiritual life does not steal a child away from the family, but returns the child with a larger heart. For the highest filial piety is not performed only in grand ceremonies. It may happen in a quiet room, in a soft conversation, in a moment when anger could arise but does not. It may happen when a child listens to a parent's fear and answers with calm. It may happen when a child helps a parent forgive someone. It may happen when encourages a parent to give, to pray, to breathe, to release one old bitterness before sleep. And if the day comes when our parents must face illness, ache, and death, may we not stand beside them empty-handed. May we bring medicine for the body, yes. Food, water, blankets, yes. But also bring a peaceful presence. Bring words of gratitude. Bring reminders of good deeds they have done. Bring forgiveness. Bring the name of the Buddha, or whatever sacred refuge their heart can receive. Bring silence when silence is better than speech. Bring love without panic. Bring faith without pressure. This is the gift Sariputta gave his mother. He helped her heart turn from resistance to trust, from confusion to clarity, from worldly attachment toward the deathless truth. And because he did so as a son, his teaching shines through the centuries not only as an act of wisdom, but as an act of immeasurable gratitude. From the Buddha's teaching and Sariputta's example, we now return to our own lives. We return to our homes, our aging parents, our unfinished conversations, our habits of delay. And we must ask, while there is still time, what should filial piety look like today? Not someday, not after regret has arrived, but now, while a voice can still call our name and we can still answer with love. So let us bring the teaching down from the monastery hall, into the kitchen, the living room, the narrow hallway of an ordinary home. Let us bring it into the sound of a mother calling from another room, into a father asking for help with something we think is simple, into the small interruptions that come when we are busy, tired, distracted, or convinced that we have more important things to do. Because filial piety does not begin only when our parents are lying weak in bed. It does not begin only when their hands tremble, when their hair has turned white, when their footsteps become slow, when we must prepare medicine, lift them from a chair, or bring a spoon of rice to their lips. Of course, caring for them in those difficult days is precious, of course. Staying beside them, when they can no longer care for themselves, is a deep and beautiful act of gratitude. But if we wait until that moment to call ourselves filial, we may have already missed many chances to love them when love was still easy. These missed chances are easy to imagine in the abstract, but harder to see while they are still happening. Two stories from the tradition, one about a mother and one about a father, make the cost and the remedy easier to feel. The first is a story many families in Vietnam already know, even if they have never traced it back to its source. It is the story of Venerable Muk Kien Lien, known in other lands as Moggallana, the second chief disciple of the Buddha, and, together with Sariputta, one of the two great pillars of the early Sangha. Where Sariputta was foremost in wisdom, Muk Kien Lien was foremost in spiritual power. He could travel across realms, perceive what ordinary eyes could not see, and reach places that seemed far beyond the world of the living. Yet the story that carries his name through the centuries is not about power at all. It is about a son who could not rest while his mother suffered. After attaining deep realization, Muk Kien Lien used his abilities to search for his departed mother, hoping to see that she had found a peaceful rebirth. What he found instead broke his heart. His mother, whose name is remembered as Than Di, had been reborn into a realm of terrible hunger, a place where beings are tormented by craving that can never be satisfied. He saw her thin and suffering, and with all the love and all the power he had, he rushed to her side. He filled a bowl with rice and brought it to her with his own hands. But when the rice reached her mouth, it turned to burning coals. He tried again, and the same suffering repeated. No matter how much love he poured into the offering, no matter how sincere his intention, the food could not reach her. He wept, not because he lacked devotion, but because he understood. In that moment, that love alone, however powerful, could not undo the weight of past deeds. A son's determination, even one strengthened by extraordinary spiritual attainment, was not enough on its own. So he did what any wise disciple would do. He did not give up, and he did not try to force a solution through his own strength alone. He went to the Buddha and asked what could be done. The Buddha's answer is one of the most tender teachings in the Buddhist tradition on this subject. He told Muk Kien Lien that his mother's suffering could not be relieved by the power of one person, however devoted. It would take the combined merit of many. He instructed his disciple to gather offerings of food, robes, and other requisites at the end of the rain's retreat, when monks from every direction had completed months of practice, and to present these offerings to the whole assembly on his mother's behalf. Through the purity and unity of that gathered community, through the dedication of merit freely given by many hearts rather than one, her suffering could finally be eased. Muk Kien Lien did exactly as he was told, and it is said that through this act, his mother was released from her torment. There is something quietly humbling in this story. Here was a disciple with abilities that most people could not imagine, and still, his private devotion was not enough by itself. He had to become humble. He had to ask for help. He had to trust something larger than his own effort, the support of a community, the dedication of merit, the understanding that love sometimes needs more than a single pair of hands to do its work. This is why, to this day, many Buddhist families across Vietnam and much of Asia gather each year on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month to observe what has become known as Vu Lan, the season of filial devotion. Temples fill with people carrying offerings for their parents, living and departed. Children pin a rose to their shirt, red if their mother is still alive, white if she has passed, as a quiet, visible reminder of a debt that can never be fully measured. Monks chant the Ulambana teaching, the very teaching born from Muk Kien Lien's search for his mother, and families dedicate merit not only to their own parents, but to all parents, recognizing that gratitude, when it grows large enough, stops being a private transaction and becomes something shared. The story also carries a gentler, more everyday lesson for those of us who are not chasing distant realms in search of a missing parent, but simply trying to care for the ones still sitting in the next room. It reminds us that filial love does not have to be carried alone. If a sibling can share the burden of caring for an aging father, let the burden be shared. If a community, a temple, a neighbor, or a friend can lighten the weight on a tired daughter caring for a sick mother, let that help be accepted rather than refused out of pride. Mute Keen Lean, for all his power, still needed the Sangha we, with far less power, should not be ashamed to need each other. The second story returns us to the Buddha himself, and to a debt he too had to answer. Long after his awakening, long after he had walked from village to village, turning the wheel of the Dhamma, word reached the Buddha that his father, King Suddhodana, ruler of the Sakya clan, was growing old and weak in the palace at Kapilavastu. The king who had once tried to shield his son from every sight of suffering, who had built walls of comfort around the young prince, in the hope that he would never leave the throne, was now himself facing the very old age, sickness and death he had once tried to hide from Siddhartha's eyes. The Buddha did not stay away. He travelled to Kapilavastu, and when word came that his father's health was failing seriously, he returned once more, this time with his cousin Ananda and his own son, Rahula, who had by then become a young monk. He sat beside his father's bed, not as a distant, awakened teacher visiting a stranger, but as a son returning to a parent who was afraid. According to the tradition, the Buddha spoke to Suddhodana of impermanence, of the nature of the body, of the peace that becomes possible when clinging is released. He did not lecture from a distance. He sat close. He let his father see, in his very presence, that fear could be met with calm rather than resistance. It is said that as the Buddha spoke, Suddhodana's mind grew clear and steady, and that he was able to face his final hours not with terror, but with understanding. When the king passed away, the Buddha did not remain apart from the ordinary rites of grief. Tradition tells us that he himself, together with his half-brother Nanda, helped carry his father's funeral bier, an act of humble, physical devotion that no title of Buddhahood asked him to perform, and none prevented him from performing either. The one who had gone beyond the world did not consider himself above the simple, aching work of honoring a father's body one last time. This story matters because it answers a question that quietly follows anyone who takes a spiritual path that their family does not fully understand. Does walking toward liberation mean walking away from the people who raised you? The Buddha's life gives a clear answer. It does not. He did not return to the palace out of duty performed reluctantly. He returned because his father was afraid, and because a son who has found peace has something real to offer a father who has not yet found it. Wisdom, when it is genuine, does not make a person too grand for their own family's fear. It makes them capable of sitting beside it without flinching, and of helping it soften. Between these two stories, one of a son who reached across realms because he could not bear his mother's hunger, and one of an awakened teacher who returned to hold his father's fear with a steady hand, we begin to see a fuller shape of what filial devotion can look like once it has matured. It is not owned by the wealthy who can pay for care. It is not owned by the spiritually advanced who can offer teachings. It is available in whatever form our own hands can manage. A shared burden, a humble request for help, a return home before it is too late, a willingness to sit close to someone else's fear instead of retreating from it. Sometimes the most powerful gift is simply not rushing away. To sit beside an aging parent without checking the clock, without holding the phone like an escape door, without making them feel they are taking too much of your time. Just sit, drink tea, watch the evening light, listen to the sounds of the street, let them speak, or let there be silence. Presence has a fragrance. Parents can feel it. They know when the child is physically there but mentally far away. They also know when the child has truly arrived. What do parents long for in their later years? Not always luxury, not always perfect obedience, not always great achievements. Often beneath all their words they long for one simple assurance: my child has not forgotten me. My child still has a place for me in their heart. My child has grown and gone into the world, but has not cut the thread of love. This is why small actions matter so deeply. Pouring tea can be filial piety. Carrying groceries can be filial piety. Cleaning a room can be filial piety. Driving them to an appointment can be filial piety. Reading a letter, explaining a message, fixing the television, warming food, asking about pain in the body, remembering a memorial day, visiting without being reminded. All these are not small when done with a grateful heart. They are the daily rituals of love. And if we live far away, we can still practice. Distance does not excuse forgetfulness. A call can cross distance. A message can carry warmth. Arranging help, sending medicine, checking regularly, speaking respectfully, remembering important dates. These too are forms of care. What matters is that our parents do not feel abandoned in the corner of our busy life. The Buddha praised gratitude because gratitude protects the heart from arrogance. When we remember what we have received, we stop acting as if we created ourselves. We see that our body came through another's body. Our first food came from another's labor. Our first safety came from another's sleeplessness. Even if our parents were imperfect, even if our family history carries pain, the contemplation of gratitude can still awaken a wiser response. We do not have to be trapped in bitterness. We can choose to act from the part of us that understands suffering and wishes to end it. Filial piety, then, is not an old custom meant only for ancient times. It is a living practice. It is mindfulness in the home. It is compassion toward the people whose faces we know too well, and therefore sometimes fail to see clearly. It is patience when habit wants to be irritated. It is generosity when selfishness wants convenience. It is humility when pride wants to win an argument. It is love made visible before it is too late. If your mother calls today, answer with warmth. If your father asks for help today, go if you can. If they are still healthy, cherish the days when you can walk together. If they are already weak, do not let them feel like a burden. Begin softening it where it is possible. If an apology is needed, do not wait for a perfect ceremony. A sincere sentence spoken today may release years of heaviness. We cannot stop impermanence. We cannot keep our parents forever. Even the Buddha, with perfect wisdom, taught under the law that all conditioned things must change. But we can prevent one kind of suffering. The suffering of knowing we had chances to love, and we wasted them. We can live so that when the day of separation comes, even through tears, our heart can say, I tried, I was present. I did not wait until the end to show my gratitude. That is a peaceful kind of mourning. Still painful, but not poisoned by neglect. Still full of longing, but not crushed by the memory of careless days. And this peace is built now in ordinary moments through ordinary acts, repeated again and again until they become the natural fragrance of our life. When these small practices are repeated, they become more than duties. They become a path of awakening inside the family itself. And when the family itself becomes a place of practice, then the sound of a parent's voice is no longer just a sound. It becomes a bell of mindfulness. A simple call from the next room can wake us from our impatience. A small request can reveal whether our love is only a feeling in the heart, or whether it has become action in our hands. A difficult conversation can show us whether we are still ruled by pride, or whether we have begun to walk the path of humility. This is why filial piety is not something we should postpone until our parents are weak, sick, or lying silently in old age. It is not only found in the bowl of rice we bring when they can no longer walk. It is not only in the cup of water we offer when their hands tremble. Those acts are beautiful, yes, but if we wait until then to call ourselves filial, We may have missed thousands of chances along the way. True gratitude begins much earlier. It begins in the same ordinary moments already named. A mother's call answered without irritation. A father's request met without delay. An old story heard again with patience instead of contempt. Because sometimes the deepest wounds in a family do not come from great violence. They come from a sigh, a cold face, a careless sentence, a door closed too loudly, a phone call ignored too many times. A child may provide money, food, and comfort, but if every word carries annoyance, the parent's heart still sits in hunger. The Buddha taught that the debt we owe to our parents is immeasurable, not because parents are perfect, and not because every family story is easy. He taught it because life itself came to us through them. Before we could stand, someone held us. Before we could speak, someone listened to our cries and guessed what we needed. Before we had any dignity in the world, someone cleaned us, fed us, protected us, worried for us through the night. Even if their love was imperfect, even if their understanding was limited, the stream of life reached us through their bodies, their labor, their sacrifices, and their countless hidden pains. To remember this is not to be trapped by guilt. It is to be awakened by gratitude, and gratitude in the light of the Dhamma is not passive. It does not remain as a warm thought we keep for special days. Gratitude must find a body. It must become a tone of voice. It must become the way we put down our phone when our parents are speaking. It must become the way we return home when we can. It must become the way we ask, "Have you eaten?" and truly care about the answer. It must become the way we do small tasks before being asked twice. It must become the way we protect our parents' hearts from unnecessary sorrow. When we look at the Blessed One, we see that awakening did not erase gratitude. The Buddha, having crossed the ocean of suffering, did not become distant from human bonds. Instead, he illuminated them. He showed that the highest wisdom does not make the heart cold. It makes the heart more spacious, more tender, more responsible. He honored the role of parents not as a social formality, but as a sacred truth. That to give birth, to raise, to nourish, to endure, to worry, and to guide a child is a vast labor, one that cannot be measured in ordinary terms. And when we look at Venerable Sariputta, we see another touching image of filial love. He was foremost in wisdom, a great disciple whose understanding was deep and clear. Yet in the final chapter of his life, he returned to his mother. He did not return to argue. He did not return to display superiority. He returned with compassion. He returned because he knew that the greatest gift he could offer was not wealth, not status, not even comfort, but the Dhamma, a path that could open her heart to faith and liberation. This is a profound lesson. To repay our parents is not only to serve their bodies, but also to care for their minds. If they are anxious, we bring calm. If they are lonely, we bring presence. If they are angry, we bring patience. If they're confused, we bring gentle clarity. If they are attached to suffering, we do not mock them. We offer a hand, a word, a moment of steadiness. We may not be able to preach like great disciples. We may not have profound teachings to give, but we can become less harsh. We can become more dependable. We can become someone whose presence makes the home lighter. That too is Dhamma. A home where gratitude becomes the path does not have to be a perfect home. It may still have misunderstandings. It may still have old wounds. Parents may still speak clumsily. Children may still feel tired. There may be differences between generations, between dreams, between ways of seeing the world. But in such a home, each person tries not to let ego be the final ruler. Someone remembers to soften. Someone remembers to apologize. Someone remembers that being right is not always more important than being kind. And perhaps this is one of the hardest practices for a grown child. To be patient with the very people who once were patient with us. When we were small, we asked the same questions again and again. We walked slowly. We spilled food. We cried without reason. We did not understand the worries of adults. And in one way or another, our parents bore with us. Now the direction begins to change. They may become slower. They may ask for help with things that seem simple. They may not understand the tools, the language, the speed of the modern world. They may worry about us in ways that feel unnecessary. They may hold on to opinions we do not share. In those moments, we can become irritated, or we can remember. We can remember the hands that once guided our steps. We can remember the voice that once answered our endless questions. We can remember the nights when they lost sleep because we were sick, afraid, or troubled. And remembering, we can lower our voice. We can explain one more time. We can smile instead of scolding. We can help without making them feel small. This does not mean we must agree with everything. Filial piety is not blind obedience to harm or ignorance. The Buddha never taught a love without wisdom. If our parents are wrong, we can respond with truth, but truth does not need cruelty in order to be strong. We can set boundaries without hatred. We can correct without humiliating. We can choose words that protect both honesty and respect. A child who has awakened even a little does not use the Dhamma as a weapon. A child who truly understands love does not win arguments by breaking the hearts of those who raised them. Sometimes the most filial sentence is not "you are right." Sometimes it is, "I hear you. Let us speak calmly." Sometimes it is, "I cannot do that, but I still love you." It is, "I am sorry for speaking harshly." Sometimes it is simply silence, not the silence of resentment, but the silence that refuses to add fire to fire. And if we practice in this way, something begins to change. The home may still be ordinary, but the air becomes gentler. Meals become more than meals. They become offerings. Conversations become more than exchanges of words. They become chances to heal. Even chores become meaningful. Sweeping the floor, buying medicine, cooking soup, fixing a small thing in the house, driving a parent to an appointment, sitting beside them for a few quiet minutes. These are not interruptions to spiritual life. They are spiritual life, when done with mindfulness and love. Many people imagine the path as something far away, perhaps in a temple, on a mountain, or in a long meditation retreat. But for many of us, the first monastery is the home. The first bell is a parent calling our name. The first robe of practice is the humility we wear when we serve. The first offering is our attention. The first precept is not to harm with our speech. The first awakening may happen not under a Bodhi tree, but at the kitchen table, when we finally see the tired eyes of our mother or father and feel the heart soften. One day the house may be quiet. This is not a thought to frighten us, but a truth to wake us. One day, the familiar voice that calls from the doorway may no longer be there. One day, the chair where our father sat may remain empty. One day, our mother's footsteps may no longer move through the house. The small requests we once found annoying may become memories that bring tears to our eyes. We may open the door and wish, just once more, to hear them ask for something simple. We may look at a bowl, a shirt, an old pair of glasses, and feel how deeply love hides inside ordinary things. Then we may realize that what felt like inconvenience was actually a blessing. What felt like repetition was actually presence. What felt like a demand was sometimes a parent's way of staying connected. And we may wish we had answered more gently. We may wish we had sat a little longer. We may wish we had not rushed through the days as if they would never end. But we do not need to wait for regret to become our teacher. The Dhamma is already teaching us now. Impermanence is already whispering through every passing day. Our parents are still here, or if one has gone, someone who loves us may still be near. There is still a call we can answer. There is still a hand we can hold. There is still a meal we can share. There is still forgiveness we can offer. There is still time to become warmer than we were yesterday. So let the vow be simple. May I become a child who brings peace to my parents' hearts. May I not hide behind excuses while the days pass quickly. May I learn to answer with respect when they call. May I help without being asked again and again. May I listen even when I am tired. May I speak truth without sharpness. May I be patient when they are difficult, remembering that I too have been difficult many times. May I not measure my love only by money or grand gestures, but by the tenderness of my daily conduct. May I remember the Buddha's teaching on the immeasurable debt to parents. May I remember Sariputta, returning to guide his mother with compassion. May I understand that the highest repayment is not only to feed the body, but to nourish the heart, to lead the mind toward goodness, to make the home a place where love becomes less selfish and more awake. And if our parents have hurt us, may we still find a path that does not deepen hatred. Forgiveness may take time. Trust may need wisdom. Some wounds cannot be erased by one beautiful thought, but even then, we can practice not becoming cruel. We can practice freeing our own heart from bitterness. We can honor life without denying pain. We can choose the path of healing, step by step, breath by breath. In the end, filial piety is not a performance for others to praise. It is not a ceremony we save for funerals. It is not only incense, flowers, or beautiful words spoken when ears can no longer hear them. It is the living warmth we give while our parents can still feel it. It is the respectful tone they can hear today. It is the visit they can enjoy today. It is the burden we can lighten today. It is the love we awaken today. So after this moment, perhaps we can stand up and do one small thing: call them, visit them, help them, apologize if needed, ask if they have eaten, sit without rushing, listen without correcting everything. Let the heart become a little softer than before. Let gratitude move from thought into action, because a home where gratitude becomes the path is built one response at a time. One gentle word, one act of service, one moment of patience, one choice not to wound, one breath in which we remember. These people will not be here forever, and neither will we. May we not wait until the rooms are silent to understand the value of the voice that calls us. May we not wait until the hands are cold to appreciate the hands that once held us. May we not wait until the final goodbye to become the loving child we always had the chance to be. Filial piety is not a distant ceremony, but a daily practice of listening, serving, forgiving, and awakening love while our parents are still here. If you find this useful, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment.